Here we go. There we go. We're live and we're good. So, hello everybody. Good morning. It is time for another Mindset Monday. I'm here with my mom. Here's my mom. Here she is. I'm gonna bring up that's not my notes. This is my notes. Here she is. So, good morning. Hello. Hi Sam. Hi Saida. So we have some announcements. I'll wait actually. But so this is an extra special stream because this was a channel point reward. It was my last big ticket item was to have mom on stream, and she did come on briefly on my last stream, but here she is for real. So do you wanna tell them a little bit about you and what you do?
All about me.
Yeah.
I'm mom. Sarah is probably the best thing that ever happened to me.
Aww.
Sarah and her sister,
Mostly
hands
me.
down. And mostly you. Okay, quick facts about mom. I am an intellectual property and corporate lawyer, which is kind of the polar opposite of my personality, if you've gotten to know me at all a little bit here. I am a maniac mountain biker. I love to do yoga. I like to climb rocks and trees, all of which is good for my mental health. Let's see. My partner is someone who's the polar opposite of me, which makes our discussion about relationships kind of interesting.
It's been a lifelong study.
It's been a lifelong study, absolutely, 100%. Mental health is something that's really, really important to me. So important to me that a couple of years ago I went back to school and I've been studying some neuroscience and counseling psychology. Because, that makes sense when you're a corporate lawyer, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Why not? That's lawyers be all about mental health,
Yeah.
for sure.
I think that's probably enough.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. That's fun. I want to climb rocks, so I'm scared of heights. Saida can't do heights. She can't do water. She's just
Yes, you can.
On land.
Yes, you can. You must come visit, and you will learn that you can. 100%.
Hi, gaming expert. It's good to see you. Good morning. So a couple little announcements. So our topic for today is gonna be relationships, as you probably saw from the title. Because this is something we kind of just talk about a ton already, so it was a pretty easy one to pick. As for announcements before we get going, I'm gonna come visit now. So now that we've done the last big ticket item, we have a new big ticket item, which is the horror game stream. And they recently, if you saw, introduced a channel point reward thing where you can do community channel point rewards. So you can see, if you click on the channel point rewards, it says there's 30 lives left and we got 4% raised. And you can donate your points to that if you want to see me do a whole stream about horror games, which I'm not looking forward to, but will probably be fun. And a couple other little things. So I have been doing, minus last week because I was taking a break, I have been doing guests every single week on this stream. But from now on, I'm going to be doing them every other week. And then on the off weeks, we're just gonna hang out with me because it was just causing me a lot of stress to have to get that all set up every single week, as much fun as it is to have guests on. So we are gonna be doing every other week instead. Is she gonna play FNAF? Maybe. I think I've played the second one, so I may be a little jaded to the jump scares now. I don't know. It's been a bit, to be fair. What else? Oh, we have a new emote. Hi Helen, it's good to see you. I finally had an emote. You can see it. It's called Queen Way. There it is. It's very cute. It was drawn by the lovely and talented Bunny Booty, Saida. She's wonderful. She's a wonderful lady. Was there anything else? Oh yeah, and this is I just like to remind people of this every one of these streams, but since it's like a Mindset Monday where I have a guest, any disruptive channel point reward stuff, which means like me having to go get a reptile or playing Club Penguin, we're either gonna do that at the end of the stream or I'll just refund you the points because I don't want to disrupt the flow of the conversation to have to stop and go grab a reptile. Good morning, Killian. Hi Killian, it's good to see you. All right, and with that is all of my announcements, so we can get right into it if you're ready to go.
I'm ready.
Awesome. Okay, so I wanted to start really quickly with just I'll start if that's fine by you. I have had a lot of shitty relationships in my life, but like particularly shitty romantic relationships, mainly because I, was someone who is scared of like letting go of these relationships and like being alone, and I was also really scared that if I didn't like kind of do everything I could for the person and didn't like if I asked for too much or whatever, then they would leave, and that terrified me. So I would stay and I have stayed for too long in, you know, just various relationships that haven't worked for me. A lot of times romantic relationships, but including friendships too. It's so cool your mom is joining you on stream. Yeah, she's wonderful. Yeah.
That hurts my heart.
Yeah,
to hear
it does.
that.
But I have learned a lot from it.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can really relate as well to people who are going through the same thing if you haven't also been through it.
No, 100%.
So as much as it did suck, I am grateful for it. I'm glad I'm out of it also.
Me too.
And so currently I'm gonna not talk a ton about my relationships because that's personal stuff, but currently I am in a non-monogamous relationship. I have two very wonderful boyfriends. One lives here. Well, not here. He lives about 2 hours away from me right now. He lives where I go to school. And the other one is Sam, which is a human heir, and he lives in Ohio currently, which is very far away.
We love him.
He's wonderful. He's a wonderful boy. And just, I don't really ever talk about this, but this is something where, so I really started working on my own relationship stuff, like, and working on myself and working to make better relationships. And that started, like, for real, maybe about 2 years ago, I think. And that was around the time where I got into my first polyamorous relationship, which has been quite an adventure. And I have learned so much from it because you really have to learn to examine your own insecurities in that kind of relationship. So it's been a really good relationship, and I have learned so much and I have grown so much, which has been wonderful. I'm sure human heir isn't actually a human heir. No. He's wonderful.
No, he's a human perfect, I'm sure.
Yeah, and we just, in this house and in general, I've just always been fascinated by people and by animals and by the interactions between people. So it's always something I've wanted to study. And I think a lot of that came from you, actually.
Quite likely. Yeah. We have these conversations all the time. I'm expecting our conversation today to just be the usual sort of organic thing that we talk about with a lot of tangents, of course. But I think just picking up on something you said, like when we came up with this topic, what really came up for me first was that the quality of your relationships really determines the quality of your life. I really believe that. And, you know, something else that's really interesting is someone I like to follow. Her name is Esther Perel. She is a couples therapist who's been practicing for like 35 years. She has a superb podcast. It's called Where Should We Begin? It's amazing. And she says, you know, a lot of people think that you really need to work on yourself before you get into a relationship. But the truth is, we really only get to know ourselves through our interactions with other people. And it's so true. And different people tend to bring out different things in us. So you know, that reaction I think is really important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He's pretty yours. Mom is here. Hi, Emily. It's so good to see you. I missed you. Hi. Yeah, and also on the string of that, and speaking about people and stuff, I've been reading a lot of various books lately about sort of mental health stuff and all that kind of stuff. This is the book I've been reading lately. I don't know if you can see it. It's called Hold Me Tight, 7 Conversations for a Lifetime of Love, and it's by Dr. Sue Johnson, who developed what's called emotionally focused couples therapy, the most successful approach to building loving relationships, apparently. Anyway, I've been really enjoying this book, and we will touch on some of the stuff that, like, some of my points in this came from that book because I think some of it's so cool. Esther Perel, for anyone Googling. Thank you, gaming expert. I don't know that I would have known how to spell that off the top of my head, to be fair. Okay, so I think we're gonna get right into it, and we're gonna start with basically, like, the way we start everything is, what is even a relationship? And so I Googled the definition, first of all, because that's what I always do. And so there was a couple that came up for relationship, because relationship can mean lots of different things. And so some of the ones that came up were a relationship is the way in which 2 or more concepts, objects, or people are connected, or the state of being connected. Another one was the state of being connected by blood or marriage. Another was the way in which 2 or more people or groups regard and behave towards each other, or an emotional and sexual relation or association between 2 people. And I don't know that for me any of those definitions really hit on the point, like what I think a relationship is. But one thing that I really liked out of these definitions was the first one talks about the state of being connected, and I really think that is what relationships are about. It's about connection, and I think that's something we all crave to a huge degree. Sorry, it's been a minute since I've been on doing yard work, and Ty's back at work, so we've been a little busy. That is totally fine. We just miss you. I hope you're doing well, though. Anyway, so yeah, the state of being connected.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I actually think that's a really great book title.
The state of being connected. I agree.
I'm going to write that book. I owe you a book, by the way, right? I wrote a book for her sister when she graduated from high school. And so now I need to write a book for Queen Waddles. And it could be called that, The State
of Being Connected.
The State of Being
I like
Connected.
It. I like it.
I think we really crave that connection. Last night, I listened to a lot of audiobooks, and I was listening to one called Untamed by Glennon Doyle, which came out, I guess, in April. And I was listening to this beautiful section. I had to listen to it over and over. And she was just talking about how we all feel like we're imperfect, and how much, you were talking about trying to bend yourself into a pretzel to make your partner happy.
Yeah.
And it's like, but we're all feeling like that when all we really want is like to belong. And like she says, like, we want to belong, we want to belong, we want to be loved, we want to be loved, we want to be loved. And that's just a basic human need, which articulates itself in so many different ways. Yeah. Anyway, so I 100%. I love that.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
We're connected.
We are connected. We're so connected. I'm also very cold.
Yeah. You're warm. Yeah. We're genetically connected.
We are. But I think there's lots of different ways to be connected. But I think there's one way we can be connected with everyone, and that's sort of emotionally. And I think we are kind of all interconnected in some way, circle of life and whatever.
Some people say we look alike, and when I look at you now, I see it. We have like similar glasses.
Yeah, if I had bangs and my hair wasn't blue, we'd be the same person.
Remember when you were little and I made you and your sister?
Yes, this is the haircut we used to have. Me and my sister. That was the haircut. Yeah, we all looked like her
until they decided to take over.
Get connected for free.
Tangent. Do you get points for tangents?
The only book with that title is in Japanese. You're good for book rights, probably. That's good. That's good.
I'm a copyright lawyer, by the way, among other things.
So we know all the. Well, I don't know all the things, but she knows many of the things about copyright and stuff like that.
Boring. But anyway.
Sorry. It's good to know, though. It's good to know what with all the branding and stuff. Me and Lindsay have been doing lately.
We were talking about connection, and I made us go like.
It's okay. You connected with something else. You made a connection elsewhere. Anyway, back to relationships. So I think so we're a social species. So not only is connection and intimacy important, it is literally a basic need. There is a study that I've heard talked about in several different psychology courses, and it's this study where they took baby monkeys away from their mother and they set up 2 wire monkey moms, and one of them was covered in cloth, so it was a comfier mom, and the other wire mom had a bottle, so it was basically getting the baby monkeys to choose between comfort and food, and more often they would choose comfort rather than food. So it's they would literally choose being comfortable over food, which is a very, very basic human need, or primate need, social animal need and stuff like that. And there's this old belief that has become less of a thing, but I think even now it to some degree still permeates, where we kind of think that if we coddle people too much, or as particularly with kids, the old belief was if you coddled kids too much, they would turn out to be weak, and you need to make them be independent right away, and that was very detrimental. My friend is just taking the bar now to become a patent lawyer. That's really cool. I'm sad for those baby monkeys. Yeah, science is not kind to animals, but it's how we learn, unfortunately. Yeah. We learn a lot from the suffering.
That brings up a lot for me when you discuss that, because this is strange, but when you were babies, I took a lot of flack from people because I was viewed as being very indulgent. I didn't want to leave you guys. I never wanted to put you down. We did the co-sleeping thing, and then people would freak out and say, oh, they might suffocate or whatever. They won't learn to sleep on their own. Yeah. All sorts of things that were a bit against the grain then. I really believe that we need that closeness and that nurturance and that assurance,
Yeah. Well, one thing I think is really interesting, to get a teeny bit off on a tangent here, is you also never really established rules for us in the way that a lot of my friends' parents did. And honestly, my friends who had like the stricter the parents were, the more disconnected the relationship was between the parents and the kids. And I honestly think that's one of the reasons that we are so close, is because it was never, you can't do this. It's you know, you make your own choices. You do need to deal with the consequences, and I support you. You know?
Yeah.
And I think that was
Yeah.
is the way I want to parent my kids.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened, but it's true. I can remember being out with other family, and I'm sorry, I don't want to be judgy here. I just have my own way of doing things. But I can remember being out at a restaurant with another mom who was like all over her daughter because you have to finish your milk, and I'm thinking, really? Really? Haven't you got more important battles to fight? I don't know, but that's just me.
Yeah.
You know, and I remember when
Yeah.
your sister brought home her older boyfriend, and if at first was afraid to tell me, and I was like, just bring him over. I want to know. Just you're going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah,
what?
for sure.
You're going to do it anyway. I
Yeah.
would rather just know.
Yeah, that's yeah.
You know, be here
Absolutely.
to catch you.
Absolutely.
You know,
yeah.
it's in the same when you guys would go to parties and like
Yeah.
everybody's drinking. I know.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you're 14 or 15 or anyway, sorry, tangent.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is we're getting a little ahead of ourselves.
We are
but I
getting
think it's okay. That happens. I do think, though, just to touch a little bit on something we'll get into more later, that the thing that was really helpful about that is you let us establish our own boundaries instead of demanding to be let in and to have more of a say than was really maybe good, I guess. Because what happens, I'm sure everyone in chat is retrospectively analyzing their parents. I know I am. Well, it's just like,
I'm sorry.
it's okay.
I'm
I mean,
sorry.
but
No judgment. There's no
Examining this stuff
judgment.
is good, though. You can't change what happened, but you can be like, oh, I realize maybe they were quite strict, and maybe that's one of the reasons I'm not as close with them as I would like to be, or whatever. Like, I just think when we, especially with kids, when we set out rules and just demand they follow them, we are literally asking them to compromise what they actually think is right and to listen to someone else instead, which is hugely detrimental later on, because at the end of the day, you need to do what is right for you. And, you know, kids do still need to be taught boundaries of, you know, basic things that are and are not okay. But, you know, like you're saying, demanding they don't do things that they're going to do anyway is just a recipe for disconnect, basically.
Absolutely, especially if it relates to, you know, conforming to a role or an identity that doesn't fit for them.
Yeah.
Massively detrimental. I actually believe that, like, most every human being comes into the world knowing everything they need to know, and it just needs to be allowed to unfold. I mean, yes, within some certain parameters of safety. Wow, we're really getting way off topic.
Okay.
This is how we are, you know.
Yeah. Anyway, we aren't talking about kids and stuff. I was a dumb kid growing up, so I understand a lot of the rules my parents had for me.
We're talking about parent-child relationships. That's part of relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But kind of in the same vein. So this is sort of talking about going back to the monkey thing where they would choose comfort over food. There have been studies about what happens when children are deprived of social connection, like from the get-go. So there's one I was looking at today. So it was this child. I think this is a pseudonym, but they called her Jeannie, and she was maltreated and almost completely socially isolated until she was 13, from the time she was a baby. And when social services finally found that out, she was obviously moved away from that environment. But then when they were trying to teach her like language skills and social skills, like a lot of it was just like she just wasn't able to get there. And there is, so I don't remember if I remember the term, but there's a term for development, and this happens like with physical stuff, and well, I guess brain is also physical, but like emotional and like language capacity and stuff, where there's like a critical period of development.
Yes.
Yeah, that happens when, you know, babies are in the womb, and it also happens when kids are growing up, where there's like a certain time period that is like, if they don't learn, if they're not exposed to language in this time, and it gets past that, they will probably never have the full language capacities that they would have. I've been this smart since day one, lucky or unlucky.
I believe that.
Sam came out of the womb making jokes.
Apparently.
And I was looking at another study this morning where social deprivation in children is actually reflected in their brain and the size of certain structures, so including like some of the processing structures, which is like the frontal lobe and stuff like that, as well as communication between stuff like the amygdala, like the emotional centers, and the higher processing centers, which made it really hard for them to relate to other people. How early is too early to teach German impression? What was the case of the girl who grew up in the wild? I'm not sure. There's quite a few. The studies of feral children are both horrifying and fascinating because it's just like it kind of comes back to the monkey thing. It's like we honestly learn so much from the worst of cases, and it's like I'm thinking like Phineas Gage, who got the railroad spike through his brain. Like no one would ever do that to someone, but it's like because it happened, it ended up being a great model for what happens when you don't have this part of your brain. So we kind of just make do.
I want to say NAGE. That's what I want. I give all you guys acronyms, right? So not a gaming expert is NAGE in my mind. Anyway, that wasn't the case of she didn't grow up in the wild. She sort of grew up in like a locked in a room.
No,
right?
I think it was along the lines of this is really rough. But she, I believe, from the time she was like 10 months old, she was always in her crib, strapped down or strapped to a toilet, and
I feel that.
You don't want to think about it too hard, but like with little to no social interaction at all.
Yeah.
So awful, super awful. Got something in my mouth.
I hate it when that happens.
Yeah. There are also studies that show, like, this is not just in kids, this is just in general, but that your risk of mental illness is increased with social deprivation, because we do, like I said, like social interaction and like the intimacy and stuff, it's literally like a basic need, and we don't do as well if we don't have it. And you wouldn't like, it's not something we think of so much as a basic human need, because it's like you don't just like die if you don't eat, if you don't drink, that's what happens. But it's not, it's much more subtle, but it can be just as detrimental in different ways, I think. It's a slow death. Slow emotional death.
It's interesting, right? We sort of talked about the whole spectrum of, somehow we got off on a parent-child. I guess that makes sense, right?
We are a parent-child.
We are a parent-child. But that whole spectrum of what different parenting looks like, from like overly coddled, undercooked, so to speak.
Undercooked.
Sorry.
That's okay. Yeah.
Undernourished, undertaken care of, and we all make mistakes.
Of course.
We really do.
Yeah.
I made lots of mistakes. Tons.
Yeah, and I have been shaped by that, and that's okay, because that's just how it goes.
I think the key, though, is like in any relationship, whether it's a partner relationship, a friendship, a parent relationship, you learn from it. Mm-hmm. So I was asking Siri this morning. I call her Sari. I call you all sorts of things.
Okay.
But if I could share this story, I wear this key around my neck, and there is a reason for it, because when she was 16, 17, I guess, her last year of high school, she had a really, really rough year. And we were mostly alone that year because her sister had gone to university and her dad travels a lot for work. She was having a lot of trouble. And I remember her laying on the couch one day in the living room. She didn't want to go to school. She didn't want to move. She was so down. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have it that mm-hmm. day. I did not have it to give. And I lost it. Mm-hmm. Like I yelled at her.
I think I do kind of remember that vaguely. Did I just do that thing where I just went for a walk?
You did.
Tell you and didn't come back for a while.
Anyway. Yeah. Long story short, it was a really bad moment on my part. Mm-hmm. This happens to us. Anyway, we got through it, but afterward, I bought myself this key, and it was a reminder to myself to always speak kindly to people. People ask me about it all the time, and I have never, I don't think ever since, mm-hmm. ever lost it like that with you or anybody. Mm-hmm. So even though that was a horrible thing, it was like you kind of sometimes have to fall really hard on your face and hurt somebody you love. Oh, now I'm going to cry.
Oh, it's okay. You can cry. It's okay.
Oh, no!
It's okay.
love her. I love her. Anyway,
I would cry now.
this is what I mean, though, when I say, like, you learn so much about yourself through a relationship,
Yeah,
right?
I agree. Yeah.
I mean, you can't learn that on your own. And God knows I love my own company, but I wouldn't have learned that unless I lost my mind with someone I adore and had to say, wow, I need to fix my shit, right? Oh, no. Mom swore. Mom swore on the stream. Do we get points for that?
Points for swearing.
No more swearing. Okay, I need a new necklace that says do not swear on the stream.
You've been swearing like a sailor lately, and I'm so into it.
It's all the mountain biking. Okay, and we're really off topic.
Isn't it a quote that goes like, "It's through others you know yourself"? Mom swore. You guys are super sweet. Thank you. Yeah, I agree with that. It's like, you can know yourself to a degree, but it's really only when we like how we interact with others that you really find out who you are. I guess.
It's true. It's like that other quote I was sharing with you the other day. It's actually in the book Eat, Pray, Love, which is by Liz Gilbert, which is kind of an old book now.
Thank you for the cheer. Cheer for swearing.
Oh.
You do get points for swearing. Yeah.
Anyway, so in this book, Richard from Texas, who's like this big Texas yogi guru guy, points out that, you know, we all have soulmates, but what's a soulmate? A soulmate often is someone who really pushes our buttons, who really shows us where we need to do our work. And they're really hard to live with. But they really, you know, open a lot of doors for us for growth that we otherwise wouldn't have. So, and I'm definitely married to my soulmate because I get my buttons pushed a lot. But that's okay. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. I've done a lot of the work to
That's true.
Get through that.
That's true. Yeah.
Okay, so do we need to get back on topic?
Eventually. Oh yeah. So this next point. This is something I feel like I talk about a lot, but it's fine. You guys are gonna hear it again because it applies to everything. But so as we talk about like, you know, social interaction being a basic human need, and I talk about this a lot, is that like literally we have a fundamental fear of being left, of being alone, and it's because it's like a survival fear, because in the wild, if you're part of a herd and you get left behind, you die. So it's literally life or death. And even though it's not life or death now, our bodies still react like it is life or death, which is why sometimes when we're feeling a loss of connection, you know, we feel like we're losing someone, it feels horrible. It feels like life or death, and that is why. So it's totally normal and it's totally okay, because it's just your body trying to protect you and say that safety is with the herd, so you need to be accepted by the herd and, you know, have the herd like you, so they let you stay, which is I think why we care so much about what other people think, and why we some people bend themselves over backwards trying to make other people happy so that they don't get left behind.
Yeah, that's a really tricky thing to navigate, especially in the context of a family.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Or a primary relationship.
Yeah. Also, this is something, I don't want to get too into this, but this is just something, we were talking about this lately, how when I realized that all of the emotions we have are actually, like, have come down through evolution, and they all serve a purpose, and they're not just because, like, something's wrong with me, it became so much easier to deal with them. And that's probably another different stream to get into, like, what is the evolutionary purpose of every single emotion. But what it comes down to is, in my mind, is fear most of the time. It, you know, I've talked about this before too. It's like you there's fear and there's love, and those are your two choices. And I think like every single emotion comes down to one or the other.
It's not a bad way. It's not a bad navigation tool, I would say.
Great job bringing it back on topic. We're trying. It's fine. That's what happens with these. That's what happens. That's why we have lots of time. Yeah, and relationships, I think, are one of the things in life that cause us the most stress, because we don't know how to navigate them. We aren't really taught how to navigate them, how to navigate ourselves, how to communicate what we need and what we want. And that causes us stress, and stress just across the board is not very good for your health. It causes like high blood pressure. It can put a lot of pressure on your adrenal glands.
Sure.
I think.
Yeah.
Like there's just a lot of things across the board that prolonged stress is not good for you, and we're often in a constant state of stress.
Yeah. And love relationships, love lust relationships can really hijack your dopamine reward system, and that can cause all sorts of issues. Whether you're crazy wild about someone, especially if it's the wrong person or the wrong time, or if somebody rejects you, it can cause you a lot of pain, emotional pain, and that's actually largely a function of brain chemistry, which is helpful to know because sometimes it gives you that little bit of space you need to be able to navigate successfully out of it. Sure. It's a really good book about this. It's called Why We Love by Helen Fisher, who's a cultural anthropologist, and she breaks down the different kinds of love, well, like lust, romantic love, companionate love, and the brain chemistry associated with all of that. And when you understand that, it's like it gives you another set of tools or another perspective that can help you navigate that a little more healthfully and not feel quite so much like you're just being kicked around, you know, and dragged by your nose. Like, you know, when you're crazy about somebody and you can't eat, or somebody rejects you and you can't eat, well, it's brain chemistry.
Yeah, it is. Also, Saida redeemed a hydrate, so
have
a hydrate.
Good.
You could argue fear and love both come from the need to pass on our genes. That's another discussion. That's exactly what I mean, though, is I don't think we talk about enough or aware enough of the fact that we are just animals and we are wired to survive so we can pass on our genes. And like, I think, you know, all our emotions kind of stem from that. Like you said, I think at the base of it, it's like there's love and fear because fear keeps us alive and love presses us to pass our genes on because, you know, we want to mate, we want to have babies. And so everything else kind of stems from that. And it all, like Gaming Expert is saying, it all comes back to like, we need to survive, we need to pass on our genes. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
Maybe not even survive. We need to survive long enough to pass on our genes. That's how we're wired because we are animals, and that's how animals are wired.
Yeah, it is how animals are wired. Yeah. Although I think we also have to, if we go too far down that road, it can feel a little bleak.
Yeah,
you know,
I agree. And I mean, it is something...
It's true.
I talk about, too, which is, like, biology, like, sort of dictates the circumstances we have to work with. They don't dictate your reality, but they dictate what you have to work with, basically, which is like, you know, when I think biology plays a bigger role in stuff than people think, but I don't think biology is any kind of excuse. It just means this is what you have to work on.
Yeah.
It is bleak. I don't know that I agree. I mean, I can kind of understand, but I think maybe it's just because my brain is wired like in a science way that like understanding something scientifically makes it much easier for me. So being able to be like, oh, okay, the reason I'm having this emotion is because I'm scared of this, and the reason I'm scared of this is just because my body wants me to survive and make babies. Like it feels like I have more control when I do that, because I think it's so easy for us to feel things and just want to get rid of them and not understand why we're feeling like that, and the understanding the why is really helpful for me.
Yeah. It can be bleak. I want to pick up on that because I don't want us to leave people. Hi,
River.
Hi, RT. That it is bleak is really kind of hitting me here because
which part of it is bleak? Because I'm not. Well, I don't feel that. So I
don't feel it either. I mean, I can go down that road though when I think too biologically, because like we were talking yesterday about, you know, I can't remember when this came up. We were just talking about like when, like, what's love, or what it, you know, what's that about? And we were talking about when I think I said something like, you know, it's when you are willing to, you really care so much about somebody else that you're willing to sacrifice your well-being for theirs. And you said, but there's something in that for you, and you're right. There's a deep nourishment in looking after someone that way. There's a deep, and that isn't bleak at all. Yeah. Even though it's also
absolutely, and reproduction is the basic meaning of life. Because for me, it's bleak outlook. I know when biological kids, I still see me. I want to be clear. I'm not saying I'm not at all saying that, you know, our purpose and our meaning is to make babies. That is not at all what I'm saying, because we have the magic of having such a complex brain that we get to do other things. We are not tied to our biology. Biology plays a role, but we are not, you know, slaves to our biology. We get to make choices and stuff. Yeah, I just wanted to make that clear, because I'm not trying to be like, all we're here for is making babies.
We don't want to be a downer.
No, but
be a downer.
No, I just literally, it's just for me being able to it's literally being able to separate my feelings from me and what I want and stuff is very helpful, because it, like, even like if we want to use the, you know, making babies thing as an example, it's like sometimes I get baby fever, like I just want babies, but then because, you know, I'm a thinking creature and stuff like that, I get to be like, I don't know that that's actually something that I want, and because I'm not, you know, a slave to my biology, I don't have to do that. I don't have to be ruled by my feelings, and it comes down to that for everything else. It's like understanding where your feelings are coming from gives you the opportunity to be like, I see what this feeling is doing, and I'm not on board with what that feeling wants, so I'm gonna work on, you know, doing something else that works better for me. I think just the understanding is what really works for me. Mama secretly wanting grandkids. I
have grandkids. I actually do. There's Jasper. He's a hognose snake. And Poppy. Reptiles. I love Poppy.
I would also like to point out, so just really quick about our family is that so my dad has 4 kids. Two of his kids are yours, and 2 of them are from his first marriage. So the 2 first kids are both like 30 plus, and they have kids. So it's not like she doesn't have the opportunity for grandkids, and I don't know if I want kids or not. Hi, Still Elias and Mom. Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah, I'm not. This is a whole different discussion about kids and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, it's like, just because my part of my brain is like, oh, kids, I don't have to, you know, indulge that.
It's interesting though, because we started off this whole conversation talking about the state of connection.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And like, that's just one kind, like a parent-child relationship. Maybe that's why we keep gravitating back to that.
Maybe.
Should we get back to
bringing the podcast off topic since 2020? That's okay.
That's okay.
Yeah. Did we cover this point to this is your point, so did we?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then one other thing, I've also talked about this before, but this is something you reminded me of lately, that back to the point about just like why we can feel so intensely bad or good about relationships, but especially like with bad feelings like grief and stuff like that, the reason they can be so horrible is they actually light up the same areas of your brain as physical pain, like the anterior cingulate. That's one of them. So like emotional pain is not the same as physical pain, but it can be on the same scale of how severe it is. Yeah. And it can be hard because it's like, other people cannot see your emotional pain, so you can't like prove it in any way. So we can often feel like, why do we feel so horrible? Did you see the big new channel point reward? We must work together.
Yay.
God. Okay. So now that we've talked about what is a relationship and many other things in the adventure of getting there, we're gonna talk a little bit about like types of relationships. And this is a whole thing, just because trying to define relationships is hard, because you can define it so many different ways. But one place I wanted to start, because I think it's interesting, is, so you have a picture of this actually, don't you?
Yeah, I do.
Sometimes I try to pull stuff up on the screen, but it's just hard when there's people. But so this is, you can hold it right up maybe.
I'm not good.
It might be kind of hard to see. It's okay. So this is called Sternberg's triangular theory of love. And if it's hard to see, basically what happens is, according to this theory, there's 3 basic components of relationships, which is intimacy, commitment, and passion. And then there's 8 different kinds of relationships based on how, like, which one of those you have. So like if you just have one of, like, so just to go over really quick. So this is saying if you only have intimacy, what you have is liking. If you only have commitment, you have empty love. If you only have passion, you have infatuation. I also want to point out, I don't necessarily agree with these. I just think this is an interesting place to start. Intimacy and commitment makes for companionate love. Passion and commitment makes for fatuous love, which I don't. We looked up what that meant because we're having issues with it.
Yeah, it sounded like just a really bad idea.
It's a bad idea.
Bad idea.
And then romantic love is intimacy and passion, and then there's consummate love, which is intimacy, passion, and commitment, which makes it sound like it's the best thing ever, and everything else is not as good. But basically, the one of the things I thought was interesting about this was that it broke down the components of relationships to 3 big components, and I thought that was interesting. And so the first one is passion, and the way like we would sort of define that is like excitement. When I looked it up, one thing said strong and uncontrollable emotion, like it's a intense, burning, positive feeling. Like and passion doesn't just relate to relationships. We can have a passion for all sorts of things, and it's that like it's when I think of passion, I think of that like bursting at the seams with like excited energy.
Mountain
like,
biking.
Mountain biking.
I have so many
Twitch doesn't let the
right now.
link work. Oh, I think it's because there's a star in there. I don't know. Yeah. You can look up Triangular Theory of Love or Sternberg's Theory of Love or whatever if you want to look at this. I will in the future try to get more graphics up, but it's a little too much for me right now. Anyway.
She has to deal with me.
Oh God.
Yeah.
And then I did a silly here, but and then the last thing I had with passion was, promotes intense focus, which is something you brought up of like sometimes, especially like if we're starting a new, romantic relationship, particularly, we sometimes get this like tunnel vision where all we want to focus on is that person. And that I think it comes from the passionate thing, which is, again, I think it comes down to like wild reproduction. It focus on one partner.
At least for a little while.
Yeah, but again, I do think passion can come from a lot of different things. I think that one is. I think all of these can come from a place of love, and I think, having passion for people and a passion for life is wonderful, but you just have to be careful with it because it can encourage you to do things without really thinking through.
Dumb things.
Dumb things. Passion makes you dumb sometimes.
So dumb. Like when you pull your hamstring because you have such passion.
You're too excited.
I'm too excited.
Yeah.
I have like 3 different muscle pulls right now. Anyway, totally off topic. Intimacy is next.
Intimacy is next. So, intimacy, and this is one I think is really fascinating, and we're going to talk about more later. I'm done without passion, just a constant dumb. Aww.
Me too. But about like sports.
We're all a little dumb.
Yeah. Maple Leafs. Oh.
Yeah.
God.
So the next one was intimacy, and we define intimacy as like emotional closeness or emotional safety. It doesn't necessarily involve emotional safety, but that can be a big part of it. And this can be achieved a lot of different ways. Physical affection promotes intimacy, like sex can be a kind of intimacy. It also but at the core, like I think intimacy is just about that emotional closeness and the like physical affection or sex or stuff like that we tend to think of when people say like, oh, are you like intimate with this person? What we're really, no matter how you're getting it, what we're really after is the emotional closeness of it. And I think one big problem that can happen with this, well, there's a couple, but for one thing for sure is that men, I feel like, are socialized to mainly pursue sex as intimacy, and it feels like that's often the only way that they know how to pursue intimacy. And we were talking before about like one night stands and how often you can feel really bad after it. And I think the reason is because like physical intimacy does not necessarily make you feel that emotional closeness, and then afterwards, if you didn't get that, you can feel worse because you did something that
was
maybe
dumb.
Yeah,
it was dumb.
Was dumb.
Not
maybe.
Always. But something that was coming up for me listening to you talking about that, and we talked yesterday, was like other ways to establish intimacy is like through really good listening skills.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
I mean, that's sort of, you you feel emotionally safe when someone listens to you
Mm-hmm.
and reflects that they've heard you. They may
Mhm.
not understand you. That's another leap altogether.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, because I think, you know, and we were talking about, you know, men used to be just saying men understand intimacy as a physical thing. Okay, maybe that's not fair. Whereas we
Mhm.
might tend to think of it as emotional intimacy.
I just think it's
closeness.
maybe more of a socialized thing. I don't
Yeah.
think men are encouraged to be physically affectionate. That's why it's so common to fall for your therapist.
Yeah. I didn't
Yeah.
articulate that very well.
It's okay.
Anyway.
It's okay.
Dumb.
But I just,
Dumb.
and I think in general, like, it's just with physical affection stuff. Like, I am someone who loves physical affection. We're very physically affectionate as a family, and it's this weird thing where often, like, I think particularly men are, you know, socialized this way, but it's like we're encouraged to not be physically affectionate with like friends or stuff like that, and it's weird because it's like, again, as humans, like, physical closeness is also important. Flashback to toxic masculinity talk. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And it's hard during these pandemic times when we're supposed to, you can only elbow your,
Yeah.
like 6 feet away, hockey stick length
Yeah.
away.
Sucks. Sucks. And then finally we have commitment. And one interesting thing that came up when we were talking about commitment was that there's kind of two sides of commitment. I'm all for giving my mates a hug when I see them. I love hugs. I love hugging people. Back to the commitment thing. Is there's kind of two sides of it, which is there's kind of dedication and there's obligation. And those, because commitment, I think when we looked it up, it can either sort of be, I don't know if I wrote this down anywhere, but commitment can be like a, you know, dedicating yourself to something because you want to, because you're passionate, or you love the person, or you love the thing, or like whatever. And then there's a commitment in terms of it's an obligation, like you have to do it. And we kind of use that same term for both of those things. I definitely remember being made to feel weird about it growing up, though. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, when we were looking at the definition of commitment yesterday, I thought that was a really interesting bifurcation, or like, you know, two-sided. Like, because on the one hand, it feels very noble, you feel good about that, you're dedicated to something. And on the other hand, sometimes the word commitment, it makes you feel like, you know, burdened and caged and, you know, trying to balance those things.
Yeah, I do think we have this weird tendency in society to encourage people, like specifically in terms of relationships and like romantic relationships, we encourage people to, like, it's this whole thing where it's like, oh, you need to stand like with your partner through anything, and like it's this whole thing, and it's like, actually you don't. And it can be really toxic to believe that the way you show love is to just stick with your partner no matter what they do. Like, that is a very damaging belief to hold.
It's tricky territory to navigate. I think there are some, you know, clear things that, you know, you don't put up with, and that it does become clear when a partner isn't someone you should be with. But there's a lot of other times in life, and I wonder sometimes in our culture if some folks are too quick to bolt a relationship when it gets tough. You know, there are lots of times, I've been with my partner for 30 years. That's a really long time, since I was 22. And when you're with someone that long, it's perfectly natural. Yeah, I know.
22? I'm 22.
I know.
Oh my God.
I know.
Okay, continue.
You, right? I know. Like, anyway. But I mean, it's when you're with someone that long, there are going to be times when you want to go. You're going to want to go because it's really, really hard. Mm-hmm. And that sounds kind of depressing, but it's not, because when you learn to navigate through it and you come out the other side, it's like, wow, I'm so glad we got through that. It's the same as this.
Mama Waddles is in a day over 30. That math isn't right.
I'm so old. You have no idea.
Yeah, I think it kind of like, and I had this point here, which I think it kind of comes down to I want to versus I have to. Like, because I think the real root of when commitment is good, when it's problematic, is, again, kind of like, are you doing it out of fear? Or are you doing it out of love? Because it's like, if you were staying with someone, if you're committing to someone because you're scared you can't find anything better, that is not a good commitment.
Yeah.
But if you're, you know, committing to someone because you know that the relationship has been really good for you and maybe this person is just going through a tough time and needs your support, like that is a different kind of commitment.
Yeah.
And I think that's really maybe where I would draw the line.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
You know, another great definition would be from Marianne Williamson, who wrote A Return to Love, which is a really interesting read. And she said something like, no matter how angry any of us gets, nobody is leaving this room. Just like, yeah. Okay, if somebody throws a chair, you need to leave the room. We'll talk about boundaries later, but generally speaking, okay, this can get emotionally really tough, but we're staying. We're gonna keep paddling. Okay, should we keep moving?
I feel a key part of committing to someone is strong communication. Absolutely, that's also something we're gonna talk about later. All about the communication. How do you measure whether challenges to relationships are worth trying to work through, or if you should leave? I think that one's hard because it really comes down to you. But I think the other thing too, and this has been a big thing for me lately, is that I have thank you so much 3B Marketing for the follow. Welcome. Thank you for hanging out. I think for me, well, again, I think one good way to look at it is if you want to leave but you're like I'm not going to leave, like examining why that is. And sorry, to get back to what I was saying before, I lately I can no longer tolerate people who are not interested on working on stuff. Good morning from Boston. Yeah, hello. Like I was in a very shitty relationship for like a couple of years and I'm no longer in it, but it was with a guy who he was really good at talking about stuff. And I would bring something up and say, this is a problem, and he would make me feel heard. And then nothing would change. And I think that may be what it is. Like, it's obviously going to be very situational, and I'm not sure we can answer that question in a broad way because it is case to case. But it's like, if the same issues are coming up and you are not figuring out a way to work on them, then you maybe need to reevaluate. But
I think I have a slightly different insight on that. And this would come from reading John Gottman, who's he might be the preeminent marriage researcher of our time. And he said something along the lines of, to be in a committed relationship for a really long time, there are going to be fundamental issues that you just never resolve. You just sort of agree to disagree about them. And I guess maybe what it comes down to is, can you live with that disagreement or not on those particular issues? Some things you can't. And some things you can. And it grates on you and it's hard. But you navigate it that way. So that might be one way to look at it. I mean, I know in my life there are things that are,
I don't disagree with you. However, I think even if you can't agree on something, you can still come to some sort of compromise with boundaries. Because it's like, if there's something you just don't agree on and it's not detrimental to a relationship, but all it does is kind of like, well, I don't know that I necessarily agree with you. I don't think you have to agree on everything. I don't think it's good, honestly, if you agree on everything. But if you can't resolve things that are fundamental issues, I think you may need to reevaluate the whole relationship.
I think it's coming to decide. I think what happens to you is you start to reevaluate what's fundamental to you or not, because the importance of the relationship outweighs that issue. Now, as we said, there's some things that are just a no-go.
I'm trying to think of an example, and I'm having trouble.
I can think of some, but I don't.
That's okay.
That's
okay. I'm trying to think of something weird. What would be a fundamental issue that I would be okay with?
Oh, okay. Well, okay. Yesterday we were talking about, so you're in a primary relationship and then there's a secondary relationship of some sort. Navigating the boundaries around that secondary relationship is really tricky. And you might start off thinking, I can't live with you doing X, Y, and Z with that other person. I can't live with it. And then over time, you begin to soften those boundaries a little bit. And yes, there's a compromise. There's a little bit of going back and forth. So you're both somewhat uncomfortable. Yeah. But you want to stay together so much that you do. It's really tricky. It's really
Talk about
tricky.
Boston and chat. I feel like a
Yeah.
relationship is odd if you agree on everything. Yeah, absolutely. Hi, Sam. Good to see you. I think. Wow, I'm getting dragged by your mom. I'm trying to. Okay, let's.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know the answer. I think maybe the answer is just
Have to be
it's a lifelong work to figure out what you're okay with and willing to put up with and what you're not okay with, and that stuff changes over time.
Yeah, it's like Rilke said. Do you know that quote about don't seek the answers to the questions because you have to live your way into them, basically? It's like that. It's really like that. I mean, sometimes you have this burning issue. It's like, I want to get to the bottom of it. And it's like, give it 10 years. Seriously, I know that sounds depressing.
God. Hello, friends. Hello. Hi, sheep. It's good to see you. It's a lifelong work to figure out who you are, what your boundaries are. Absolutely. That's the joy of life. You're always learning.
But to me, that's the best part of life. I mean, these journeys, I'm an introvert. I'm interested in inward journeys, not outward ones. And like, my partner is the absolute polar opposite of me. He loves to travel. He likes adventure. He doesn't understand boundaries at all.
He doesn't know the meaning of the word compromise.
Doesn't know the meaning of the word, but we make it work, and we make each other better. And it's hard on us sometimes, but it's worth it. Totally worth it.
Most of my previous girlfriends agreed with me on everything. It was infuriating. I actually had a dream about my ex last night. I agree with you. You said this before, I think, but I think it's true in that, like, the best people for you are actually the people who challenge you. And I don't mean the people who make you feel bad, because I feel like this in my relationship with Sam, to talk a little bit about my relationship with the person who's in chat. But it's like, we get along really, really well. But he also, like, to improve our relationship, I have realized that there are things that I need to work on, which is good. That's a good thing. If, like, it's wonderful to be with someone who helps you realize where your work is. And lots of different people do that in lots of different ways. But which Sam?
So many Sams.
Growth is good for us all. Too many Sam relationships. Yeah, I have just too many Sam relationships in my life. I made Mom laugh. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's the same with mountain biking. I'm a crazy maniac mountain biker, but I've fallen on my face many times. Wow. Yeah. But I get up. I keep going.
Yeah. Okay, I have to pee.
Okay, you should pee.
And we're about an hour in, so I'm ready to.
Already?
We're an hour in already. We're gonna be here all day.
Okay.
Okay. So we will be right back. I'll put on some music really quick while we do this. I'll be back soon. Bye bye. And we're back. Oh god, my screen's not loading. There we go. It loaded. It did the thing.
Oh, we should have done some yoga. Should I get up and do some tree?
Good to take lunch breaks. Okay. Oh, and Saida did a hydrate. I think I'm gonna over on that one. I've been lurking for a while since I should really be studying, but this is too interesting to leave. I'm so glad. I mean, not because you should be studying, but I'm glad you're having a good time. My mom thinks streaming's a weird concept. I tried to show her some large partners. I should probably show her a Waddles podcast. Aw.
I really love joining in on this. I'm so glad I got to start following along and learning about Twitch, and it opens up a whole new world.
Absolutely.
I don't want to be a Luddite. I want to know what my important people
Can
are
you
doing.
do a dolphin call? What do dolphins
I
sound
can
like?
do a dolphin pose.
They go like something like that, right?
that sounds like llamas.
I mean, look, I never said it would be good. It's just I can't do the vibrating thing. I'm gonna cry. This is great. I love you, Joe.
Oh, that hurts. Okay, we have to be serious now.
You have a curse in your purple liver. I want my 250 points back. No refunds. There's no refunds. Absolutely
I'll
not.
do a yoga pose for you. I have to get out of my chair.
That would be a separate stream.
A separate stream.
Okay, so where we were. So the next thing we want to talk about was just one, and this is something I think, this is something I've learned, especially doing the polyamory thing, but like you don't have to do polyamory to like learn this, but I think it's something that everybody could learn, is that we just, as a society and as people, we tend to put so much pressure on one person to fill all of our needs. Like usually our romantic partner, we just expect them to be able to give us every single thing we need, which is wild.
It's unrealistic.
Insane. Yeah.
It's so unrealistic to expect one person to fulfill all your needs, to run the domestic operation that is a household and all your finances and all that difficult stuff, to be your playmate in, whatever sports or hobbies that you have, and then to somehow be your incredible romantic partner. That is a huge load on anybody. It's unrealistic.
Yeah.
So something I've really learned, and I'm so grateful watching my daughter navigate polyamory, is like, you can have different people fulfill different needs, and wow, isn't it great that we can have open communication about it instead of people running around not talking about it, which is toxic. So
Danny DeVito fills all my needs in life. I can do Crash Bandicoot drawings.
You must not be very tall.
So many people treat their partner as a therapist. And me, I'm the daughter. Yeah, it's just, and again, like I said, like I'm not saying you need to have multiple romantic relationships, because a lot of people just want to be monogamous, but there's so many other relationships you can and should have that can, help you fill those needs. I will have you know, Mo Watts, I am 6 feet. Okay.
Oh, that's good.
I'm very happy for you, Celia. So, and I think I wanted to talk a little bit about like our expectations, what we tend to expect from one person, or some of the things people do tend to expect all from one person. So it's stuff like affection, which is like physical or verbal or whatever. It can be like sexual intimacy. It can be emotional support. It can be companionship for like interests and hobbies. Oh, sorry, Sam. No, that wasn't Sam. That was Gaming Expert. I apologize. Nightbot does not like links. I apologize. That was a clip. Anyway. It was a clip of the elephant noises. It's okay. Maybe Said or Sam can. Yeah, thank you. So again, like affection, sexual intimacy, emotional support, companionship for your interests or hobbies, or like some of the stuff you were talking about, which is like someone to share the load of like hardship, whether it be like financial or parenting, like running a house, all that kind of stuff.
Cutting the shrubs,
the
dishes, vacuuming up the pine needles. Don't get me started.
Like we really just expect someone to be able to like meet all our needs for physical affection, and to give us all the kinds of emotional supports we need for everything, and to do all the stuff that we like to do and enjoy it, and it's crazy, because nobody is ever 100% compatible with you, and that's a good thing. Nobody should be 100% compatible with you.
So I think what gets tricky here, and we were talking about this yesterday, is how do you navigate knowing that you need multiple relationships around you to provide you with all that sustenance we need
Yeah.
without your partner or you feeling threatened. That's really tricky territory.
Absolutely.
Right?
It can be, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
I think it comes back to those needs those needs for safety that you were talking about, where we want to feel that we belong and we're part of something. When our partner starts going over here, we're like, I'm losing something. How do you not feel like you're losing something?
Yeah.
That's hard.
I feel like it'd get boring if you were 100% compatible with someone, because you just get on all the time and there'd be no challenges. Exactly.
True.
That's why I say, like,
I
it's
agree.
the best people to have around you are those who challenge you in a good way, in a positive way, who push you to grow.
Sorry.
I love you so. Not gonna
love you so.
And so I did want to touch a little bit on why we think maybe we tend to put so much pressure on one people. And one interesting thing we were talking about is that, so it used to be that, you know, marriages were arranged, and they were arranged for like the benefit of the community, or to like to maintain like better status. Like, it wasn't about love. It was never about love. Except challenges as gifts and all. Yes, sheep. Communication is key. My best friend is working on that with his amazing partner. And he's like, I need Helen today. And she's like, I totally understand. That's
Wow.
awesome. That is wonderful. That's wonderful.
That's someone who feels really secure
which
in
is
herself, which is huge. Now, and that's true. I mean, we were talking earlier about, you know, how we grow in a relationship, but you have to do a lot of work here personally in order to safely navigate, to be able to do something like that.
A shovel and a headlamp. Get in there. But so it used to be, you know, relationships were not about love. They were about, you know, the benefit. And like the really interesting thing, I think, is like, as animals, it's about the feeling, because animals are not ruled by logic. And then we kind of moved into relationships in the most logical, beneficial, efficient way. And now we've kind of moved back into it's about feelings and love and soulmates. And it's really fascinating, because it's very hard for practicality and for, you know, emotion to coexist together well, because we're so ruled by our emotions. Will this marriage get me closer to ruling the world? Absolutely. So I mean, the real question is like, can you have balance between practicality and emotion? And I think that's also kind of a lifelong thing we have to do. It's really like your conscious brain versus your subconscious brain. That's like a lifelong balance you try to achieve. And I don't know that anyone really ever gets there, but getting a little closer.
Especially because your subconscious brain will run off with you from time to time. At least,
But I think it is like, and sort of like Helen was saying, that like it is, we tend to put so much, we really put romantic relationships up on a pedestal, but it is like there's so many other kinds of relationships you can have that can be just as good for different reasons, because like it's good to have different types of relationships with different people, because people have different things to teach you. They'll be compatible with you in different ways. And it's just good to have different kinds of bonds.
You know what we need?
What?
We need more pop culture around that. Because think of how many pop songs there are in romantic movies, and they're all about celebrating romantic love. We need a pop song that celebrates like mothers and daughters. You know? Or,
absolutely.
I think so. Or, you know, friendships, like more of that, because it's like, it's, you know, that's how it is.
We really see,
we idolize a lot of the, I know, we're posture check.
Romantic love between one man and one woman. That's like, that is like the ideal for some reason. I go on friend dates on the regular because sometimes I just need my buddies. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes that's just what you need.
I need to do that more often. I'm such an introvert.
Yes. Yeah, but I'm sick of it. Yeah, me too. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it is.
Like, I saw a tweet lately that I was like, what is happening? Where it was just like someone saying, oh, if you're like married, you shouldn't have friends of the opposite sex. And it's like, not only is that erasing so many people's like gender identities and like sexualities, like I'm bi, can I just not have friends? Is that what this is? but it was just like so like who your relationship must be so insecure if you genuinely believe the best thing to do is just cut a whole like section of people out of it. Wild.
Yeah.
Oh god, I'm losing chat a little bit. There was a Netflix film at the moment which is about friendship love. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Not sure what the name of it was. Yeah.
I will go look for that.
Yeah. Heads be wild.
I'd be down for that.
Heads
oh
be
my gosh!
wild.
And don't even get me started about all those icky reality shows on Netflix. They're not even about real. Let's not go there. Sorry. You mentioned Netflix, and it was like all those crazy. I'm on an island dating people. Oh.
Did you see that vid where the girl got complimented in the drive-through window on her hair, and it was so mad. Oh my god. Not reality shows. My mom has the same mentality. I love her so much, but she has a very old-fashioned way of thinking. Yeah, I get that. So we talked a little bit about what might be some of the different like kinds of relationships you have, and so this is we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 here. This is just one way to break it down. I'm sure there's tons and tons of other ways. There's a politician in the UK who famously doesn't let himself be in a room alone with any woman but his wife. That's
well, when you're a politician, I get that.
people, yeah, it's
unfortunately.
it's just but it's a strange standard to set. You know?
Yeah, that's where our culture's at.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, right?
Yeah, seemingly a self-imposed.
Yeah.
Anyway, so for the breakdown we have number 1, obviously we started with familial relationships, which is generally the relationships you have because of blood relations, circumstances of birth, that kind of thing. So like, you know, parent-child. Here we are. And then we have friend relationships, which we sort of defined as repeated intentional connections that we cultivate for mutual support, sharing of interest kind of thing. Like that's, and the other thing with all these is they can like overlap in different ways. Like that you don't just have one. Like I'm friends with my mom. A lot of people are not friends with their parents. Like that's okay. We're friends. Right? We're friends. Yeah. And then so we had 2 here. Maybe I'll leave those ones to the end because they're maybe more the uncommon ones. But
sure.
So then there's partner relationships. And this is an interesting one, I think, because so partner is used in lots of different ways. It's a nice term that's been used more lately as a gender neutral term for your like significant other, your romantic partner, your boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever you want to call it, which is great, and it's why I've been using it more. But I think the interesting thing about partner too is it's used in other contexts, like you think like business partner and stuff like that. And so I think the interesting way to define it would be like someone you enter into an agreement with for a mutually agreed upon purpose, which may be unspoken. And this sounds kind of, you know, very businessy and very like hardcore, but it's like I think the term partner is interesting because if we used it more to mean just that, like someone you have like some sort of social contract with, and we used it more as like to say, oh, romantic partner, or like, you know, I can't, the business partner, you know, and even like this is something you kind of learn in with like polyamory is people even define partners different way. Like people might define it in a hierarchical way, which is like primary or secondary, or people might define it in partner. Like partner in crime, that's a good one. In like people might say nesting partner for the person they live with or stuff like that. And so there's just different ways you can define it, and that's why I think it's such a cool term. Let me go up a little bit, I can't see. Bit crazy, yeah. Does he not trust himself? Hi, Mouse! It's good to see you. Thank you for coming. He seems to kind of wear it as some sort of badge of honor of loyalty to his wife. I keep it weird. I agree. Like that's just a weird. It's just a weird standard to set to be like, oh yeah, I don't have any, you know, lady friends, so I'm good. I'm better.
Trying to avoid scandal, right? When you're in the public eye like that, I mean, life is so artificial anyway.
Yeah. So strange. Anyway, so that's kind of, I think. Usually now when we say partner, we mean like romantic relationships, but I just think it's a cool term because you could use it for a lot of other things, and I think it would be nice to have terms. Like even, it's like I have like best friends. It's like some of my, you know, best friends, like my big sister is one of my best friends. You're probably one of my best friends. I have many best friends. Aww. But it's like, it just would be nice if we could equate other, you know, like friend relationships, platonic relationships a little more with like on the same level as romantic relationships, because I think it's so unfortunate that we just see romantic relationships as the be all end all of everything, because not everybody wants that, and even if you do, we will get rid of all other relationships for it, and it's
to our detriment.
My 80-year-old aunt has a 90-year-old partner. Partner seems more appropriate more than boyfriend.
Yeah.
I imagine being in the public eye, you have to be so careful. But the funny thing about that though is like I do get it on some level, but it's like that is a societal, like, cultural belief, and we have a culture of like not communicating with people and so on and so forth. Like at this point in my life, it's like if my partner is in a place where they're thinking about other people, like in any kind of way, like, God, just tell me and we can talk about it and we can like work it out however many like way we need to, whether it's like they want to be not monogamous or they just feel like they're getting a need met. Like I just am at the point now, especially where it's like if, you know, someone were to cheat in a relationship with me, that would be the end of it, because I work so hard to create an environment where, like, if you're feeling like something like that, like, just tell me, my God.
I think actually you bring up something really important here when you're talking about partnership and communication, because like if you talk about, okay, let's just for fun take into a legal context, okay? So if you have, in Canada, in Ontario, if you have a partnership, but you don't have any sort of written agreement that states what all the rules and terms and conditions are that apply, then by default, the rule is, well, everything you own, I own, and everything that is your debt and obligation is also mine. Now, people might not realize that that's the way it is, and then end up in a giant mess. Whereas at the beginning, if, you know, especially in a partnership kind of thing where you have certain expectations of people, talking about those are really clearly and talking through, you know, well, if this happened, then what? Is really, really important. I mean, we have someone near and dear to us who is in that situation right now. And it's like, you know, they're contemplating partnering in certain ways. And there's a lot of anxiety on the part of one of them. It's like, well, that's going to go really badly wrong unless you have an upfront conversation about it. And if clear communication isn't the foundation of like a solid, loving relationship of any kind, I don't know what is.
Yeah. How would you, there is common law, right? I don't know exactly what common law is.
Common law is when you're living together in a household, but you're not married, and there are somewhat different rules. Here in Ontario, for instance, if you're married, you automatically share all your joint property, all your property 50-50. That's the basic rule, subject to some exceptions. In a common law relationship, that's not the case. You don't share your property, but there's often spousal support or child support type obligations that might arise out of it. Now, I'm not a family lawyer. I'm a copyright, trademark, corporate lawyer, so take that all with a grain of salt.
How would you advise dealing with having a crush on someone outside a relationship? Here's the thing, right?
Great question.
This comes back to something I have said before, which is you can't stop feelings. You don't get to control feelings. You cannot control how you feel. You cannot control how other people feel. And so feelings are always valid. It's always okay to have feelings because you don't get to decide that, and trying to decide you should or shouldn't feel some way is gonna do nothing but distress you. And so, and I mean, this may just be me because it may help that I'm like a bisexual person and think lots of people are cute, but it's like, if someone like one of my partners is like, oh, I think this person's really cute, like that's great. It's like, that's adorable. And maybe, and if I do feel a little threatened, that's okay. And that's normal. And all I need to do is express that, hey, it's okay that you have a crush on someone, but I'm feeling a little threatened by that. I just need some comfort here. Because the oh God, we're having okay. Sorry, I'm gonna have to skip a couple of these just because we're getting ahead of things. But I wanted to talk about this. But it's like the thing to realize is we talk a little bit about this, and this is also kind of a thing that I think is a cool concept of polyamory, which is like something like love. There's no scarcity with love. If I love a person, that doesn't mean I can't love another person just as much, or like it doesn't work like that. It's because if you think about in your life, like you probably have family members that you love, you might have a romantic partner or multiple romantic partners that you love, you probably have friends that you love. Like there's no scarcity of love. And realizing, say my partner has a crush on someone, if I'm able to be like, that has nothing to do with how they feel about me, and there's no scarcity of love for me, and all I need to do is be like, hey, I just need a little extra love, in this particular way, like, that's fine. I think we tend to feel like, if someone, especially with romantic relationships, if this person likes this person, then they must like me less. But it doesn't work like that. If you like one food, does that make you like another food any less? No. If you like one friend, does that make you like another friend even less? No. So why do we believe that for romantic relationships?
Yeah, that was a really good question about the crush.
Yeah.
And so I've been in a long-term, very traditional relationship for a long time. And it is something, it happens all the time. And I think when you're really comfortable with your partner, you can talk about it a little bit, and it's not threatening, as you say.
Yeah.
And some taking it further, some people might take that into a totally fantasy type of thing.
Yeah.
Even. And the critical question is always, do you act on it or not?
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's where people get into trouble.
Yeah.
And some people can have communications about that, have a more open relationship or not.
Exactly.
That's a whole thing. But that's the thing. Are you going to act on it, or are you just going to have it here and here?
Yeah. Well,
that's tricky, and it can change over time. And Sheep had a question about putting it into a contract or something.
Oh God.
I lost it in there somewhere. but the thing that it may or may not be something that's written. I mean, okay, yeah. If you're talking about a household arrangement, that kind of domestic financial stuff always should be written. But if you're talking about sort of more nuanced, I don't want to call them softer, but softer, like relationship issues, you wouldn't necessarily write it down. And the thing is, these things also change over time. Mm-hmm. What worked last year might not work this year. So this conversation, this communication has to continue. Mm-hmm. People change. Some people change at different rates than others. You just have to keep the communication going. Right?
Yeah, I think the thing, sorry, just to continue a point I was making earlier, is when I was saying, like, feelings are valid and you don't get to control feelings, and trying to is not going to help you. What you control is your actions. You get to decide what you do with those feelings. And the best way, like, we'll get to this a bit later, but with relationships, the best thing you can do is create an environment where it's okay to talk about whatever, and to understand that feelings do not equal actions. Just because someone, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, whatever, thinks someone else is pretty it's not automatically detrimental to your relationship. That's not how it works.
Yeah. I guess some people might write down a more a relationship.
We're gonna catch up on chat, and then I'm gonna make a point, and we're gonna hold on, please. Okay. Marcia was talking about how she calls her boyfriend, but it feels like it doesn't describe how serious it is. There's no legal documents, but yeah, I just think we could use more language for that kind of thing. What are your opinions on long distance relationships? I'm not really, in a general sense, not a big fan of it, but I am currently in one because I am super in love with a boy who lives in Ohio, but like...
We all love him.
I'm gonna yank his ass over here the second I can. Anyway.
Come to Canada. Canada.
But what I wanted to say, yeah, most people I know wouldn't be able to communicate that to a partner, mainly because it would result in a massive fight. But again, that's what it comes down to. Making better relationships is partly about working on yourself, and it's partly about working on a relationship. And a big thing is being able to separate feelings from actions and intentions and stuff like that. Because that's what I mean. It's like a lot of people, if I would say, to my partner, hey, I kind of think I have a crush on this person. Like, I just think they're cute, or like whatever. Like, what happens is the other person might feel really threatened, and that could make a fight because they think that feeling automatically means something bad's going to happen for them, which it's not. And that's where the work needs to be done.
Yeah. That's fair. I mean, I'm sort of presupposing that there's a certain level of work done here, of self-worth and emotional resiliency, emotional agility, let's call it.
Yeah.
And not everybody has that. I sure didn't have it in my 20s. I probably didn't even have it in my 30s.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Yeah.
It's easier for me to say now.
Yeah. There's another point I wanted to make, and I think we will also talk about this a little bit more later, but she was talking about like writing down a thing, and I think another really cool concept about polyamory that I think should be brought more into like other relationships too is that, you know, for some reason we do this thing. This does also happen in polyamory, by the way, but we do this thing with, particularly with monogamous relationships, where it's like you get into a relationship and maybe you talk about what you want out of it and what you don't want about it, or maybe you don't. But even if you do, we often like don't renegotiate. We don't check in to say, hey, this is working for me, this is not working for me, you know, that kind of thing. That is something I wish we did more just in relationships across the board. Like, I wish it was more encouraged to check in with people, because we, like, it happens where it's like we make it this thing of like change. We're afraid of change, and changing relationships is scary, and we often feel like we're gonna lose something. And yeah, and then like 3B is saying, like, we expect people to be mind readers instead of being like, this is what I want out of this relationship. And it makes it so, like, if we had regular renegotiation, it would make it so much easier to be like, this is not working for me. Because that's what gets really scary. Because if you just assume that everything is going to stay like at a plateau and any changes to that is dangerous, that is when it becomes really scary. Which is like, if you normalized checking in, talking about what does and doesn't work, like, that would be so much better, in my opinion.
That's a good point.
LDRs kind of push you to communicate more efficiently. At least that's what I found being in them. But guys, like, I will say, I'm really, really content with my relationships right now. Even my long distance relationship. And as much as I want him here, I'm still very content with how it is. So, but I will say, having like kind of a plan for the future helps a lot. When I previously was in long distance relationships where there was like no real plan for the future in sight, that was much more distressing. I have a cousin that is currently in a long distance relationship. They're very happy and cute. I feel like it may come down to the individual's love language. Yeah, I just miss out on the physical aspect and being able to do stuff with them and being able to like hug them.
I think stuff. 3V Marketing's point about some people want their partner to be mind readers is right on.
Yeah,
that's right on.
I think we're kind of, I know we had extra points here. Okay, well, we'll go over these points quickly and then we'll move on since we're already kind of here.
I want to pick up on that because, sorry, I want to pick up on that. That part about being a mind reader, it's really true. And then sometimes you also get people who just don't even speak each other's language anyway. And that's difficult to navigate.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. I just we keep getting ahead of ourselves, so I just want to get to that already.
Okay, get to it.
But just really quickly, since we were talking about different kinds of relationships, the other kinds, I'll just go over them quickly. One was like professional relationships, which are just like the ones necessitating with having a job, and then the other two, which I think are interesting, and we talk about, is the relationships that are often very brief or maybe like not quite as deep necessarily, are either situational relationships, which are developed due to repeated interactions with people, like you were talking about. You know, you go to the same Tim Hortons or whatever every single day, and you know, so you get to know the ladies or the fellas that work there, and you end up having a bit of a relationship with them, even though they're not like, you don't go out of your way. Sorry, I'm trying to get my water bottle. Go out of your way to make a relationship with them, but it still kind of happens. And then the other one is, sorry,
that was hydration yoga, by the way.
Thank you, frickin' honey, for the hydrate.
When you twist yourself into a pretzel in order to reach your water bottle, but still keep your face on the screen.
Hi, honey. How are you doing? And then, yeah, the last one was fleeting relationships, which is some people do this thing which is really fascinating that they do with strangers. It's like if you sit beside someone on the plane, or even something like a one night stand, where sometimes you have moments of really deep intimacy with someone that you then never see again. And I think that's kind of what it makes it a safe place. And sometimes people, you know, you get into a conversation with people and you find out all these deep details about them that they probably wouldn't tell you if, you know, you were to meet them at like a cocktail party or whatever people do to socialize
it's
when they're
safe
adults.
because they can't hurt you. There's no one they can tell.
Yeah.
So there's sort of a safe repository.
Yeah,
I've actually had some really deep and interesting conversations
Those are very
with
cool. Yeah.
people I randomly met in an airport.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I have to pee again, and then we're going to get into our next topic of how to work on yourself for better relationships, and then we'll end off with how to actually work on your relationship. So we'll be back in a couple of minutes. I'll put the music back on. We might have a quick stretch. You guys also, have a stretch. Have a stretch. Drink some water. You're loved, appreciated. So on and so forth. We'll be back. Again, and now we're getting into the stuff that I'm particularly excited about. I think people are talking about various little interactions they have with people, which is great. Pretty. Get to watch the sunrise. That's cool. So now I'm gonna put my headphone back in to make sure y'all can hear me. We are going to talk about things. We're gonna talk about how to work on yourself for better relationships. God, I'm really bad at remembering people's names. So,
I have a little trick. I try to say their name 3 times in the conversation after they tell me. I have a better chance of remembering it because I can't remember either.
You're a smart lady.
I'm not. You know what? I'm not. I just know what I don't know.
Okay, so the reason I broke it down into working on yourself and working on a relationship is, so in a relationship, there's 3 parts. In our relationship, there's me, there's you, and then there's us. And you get to work on you, and you get to work on your relationship. You do not get to work on the other person. That is their work to do. Sight is bullying me. But be nice to him, even if he's eating celery. I don't like celery, but, he's a nice boy. Call him out for eating celery.
You guys need a contract about that.
Is it celery nasty? We're gonna have in my house. Sam and I ever lived together. We're gonna have a contract about when it's okay to eat celery in the house. Using people's names in conversation when you meet them shows you're paying attention and engaging. Yeah, with peanut butter. Okay, it's okay. We're not judging, but I'm judging a little bit.
If you want a recipe for frustration in life, try to change somebody else.
Yeah.
Waste of time.
I mean, I will asterisk that to say it can be good to push other people towards positive growth, but you cannot make them do it. You can support them. You can offer input if they would like input. You can't make them.
Yeah, actually, you and I have developed a really great way of conversing lately, which is if one of us wants to make a suggestion, we ask for permission first. So we'll often say, do you want my listening ears? Do you want me to just listen to you, or would you like some advice?
Mm-hmm.
And that sort of opens the door. It opens each of us to being willing to listen, because man, nothing ticks you off more than someone offering you unsolicited advice. It's like, meh.
And we all
Don't
do
hear
it.
you.
Like we talk about a little bit about the like, you know, the kind of like mansplaining thing, and just that men do tend to kind of do that more. The offering advice, which if you want to know more about my thoughts on that, there's a whole podcast on that. But I like, and I was talking about this lately with people in Discord, and they were talking about their, you know, that happening to them, but also like I do it and you do it, and we're very emotionally intelligent and aware of other people, and we still do it because we want to help. We just want to help you. Want to help you.
Well, it's really when someone you love and care about is in pain or in distress, or you want the best for them. You want to sometimes tell them how to do it, especially if it works for you.
Yeah.
Except that what works for me doesn't necessarily work for her, and she has to sort it out for herself. If
Absolutely.
she wants my input, then I offer it.
Yeah.
And when I overstep my bounds and she points it out to me, then I thank her, because I need to be reminded.
Yeah, absolutely.
All the time.
See, now as a man, the thing about mansplaining is, yeah, okay. But well, the really interesting thing, I don't know if I had a point about this in here or not, but the reason that we, you know, often I feel like, you know, see someone who has like a problem and want to fix it is actually because seeing someone you love in distress causes you distress, and you just want that distress to go away. So you're not necessarily even thinking about what's best for them. You just want to be like, I will fix this, because then I can stop feeling distressed. Which is something to be aware of.
Sheep Thief just made a good point.
I used to be very guilty of that because engineers have an innate drive to fix things. Yeah, but I took a huge step back from that and it worked out so much better. Absolutely. That's exactly what it is. It's like we just want to fix stuff. We want to like make it better. It's hard to see other people in distress and let them be in distress. We don't like being uncomfortable. And that is like step one we've talked about before. Step one of like working on your mental health, working on your relationships, working on a lot of stuff is you gotta just be uncomfortable. You have to be okay with it. And it's really hard.
You know what else is really hard is living with lawyers in your household. So there's 4 of them in our family, and her dad, my partner, is a litigation lawyer. And so everything, no matter what you say, he'll say the opposite. And sometimes that can leave you not feeling heard. But you also sometimes have to understand the other person and forgive them a little bit.
It's really funny because he does listen. But even in conversations, even if he is listening to you, he is still arguing against you. And it's wild. It can be very frustrating if you don't understand what's happening.
Very frustrating.
Still frustrating if you understand what's happening.
Yeah.
But less frustrating.
Yeah.
I used to work with lawyers, yeah.
Oh,
I have lots of lawyers in my family.
it's terrible.
He doesn't know how to stop lawyering.
You have to know when to take it off.
Yeah.
Take it
So
off.
for working on yourself, one thing we talked about before, and I have as a point here is, you know, working on your support network. So working on relationships that are not, you know, your romantic relationship or not your, you know, primary relationship, whatever. It's, you know, so what is a support network? And we have, you know, a support network is a group of various people with whom you're close to because you know you can generally count on them to provide you support when you need it. And like, so like basically it can be a web of different kinds of people. It can be, you know, friends, it can be relatives, it can be like your pets can be part of your support network. Like whoever makes you feel good and can meet some kind of social need for you is part of your support network. And it's good to have multiple people you feel you can rely on to talk about things and to offer you support when you need it, basically. We also, I missed on here, but like having, you know, someone like a professional person, like a therapist, that's also part of your support network. And these, again, in my head are kind of people who support you and also gently push you towards growth. And part of that is by listening and helping you work stuff out.
Yeah, the great benefit of a therapist, to my way of thinking, is they are a trained and objective third party who are only invested in your getting better.
Yeah.
Assuming that you've chosen well. I mean,
Yes,
you know,
that's-
therapists are just people,
They're
and
just
it's really important sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes there's issues that you just can't talk about with your family or your friends. You need someone who's outside of that circle
Mhm.
so that you get some appropriate feedback.
Mhm.
So I'm a big fan of that. And I know in our culture there's still a bit of a stigma associated with that sometimes. To me, anyone who is, you know, intelligent, knows that that's just a good thing to do. You go to the doctor, you go to a therapist. I mean, it's just normal.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's how I
absolutely. You know, if you can and you have access to therapy,
Access,
absolutely do it.
Access can be a problem.
Absolutely.
Access
For sure.
can be a problem.
Yeah, but if you can, I highly encourage you to do
Yeah,
it
me
because
too.
it just helps. It helps everyone.
Yeah.
Again, assuming you, it can take some work to find the right person, but that's just how it works in life. That's how life is.
Yeah.
And so more on a good support network. So usually, like, you can define support network multiple ways, but I think for me and for us, especially us being little introvert people, it's really like it's good to have a couple really close people. Maybe not a couple, maybe it's several. A couple seems like not enough. But because we can only sustain so many close relationships at a single time, because even though we don't have a scarcity of like love and that kind of stuff, we do have a scarcity of time and resources. So you do need to be aware of that. And yeah, like having people who lift you up, who generally make you feel better after you interact with them, and ideally that there's enough, you know, in like overlap. Like the most ideal situation is you have a thing you need to talk about, and there's like 2 or 3 people you could talk to about. Got to be careful that the people in your support network are supporting you and helping you grow. Sometimes they can bring you down, make them feel. Yeah, exactly. That's why it's super important that your support network is actual supportive people.
Yeah.
And that can take some uncomfortable removing of relationships.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I want to call you Nage. Forgive me. I just acronym everything.
Nage in my head.
Nage. Oh, il s'appelle Nage.
Nagy.
Nagy.
Sorry.
No, we like Nage
Nage.
very, very much. He's very insightful.
Nage the Sage. That's
yeah,
good.
Brene Brown speaks a lot about this in her writing. She wrote The Gifts of Imperfection and Daring Greatly and other great stuff. And she really talks about choosing that close inner circle of people really carefully. I mean, people that you know you're okay to be vulnerable with, who aren't in it for themselves, who've got your back. They're hard to find.
Yeah.
They're hard to find, and sometimes, you know, it takes sometimes spending a little time with people to really, you know, if, you know, they're going to bring you down or not. But when you figure it out, it's like, life is too short. I want people who lift me up.
Yeah.
Cheerleading. Woo!
The cheerleading people did not lift me up emotionally or physically.
No, sorry about that.
It's okay.
She's been through a lot.
I've been through a
She's
lot.
Been through a
Okay.
lot.
Yeah. It's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then again, like the funny thing about this is like a way to improve your relationships is to have multiple relationships. That also means you have to work on multiple relationships kind of all at the same time, and that's, you know, the lifelong work. And so this is something we touched on quite a bit earlier, is establishing healthy boundaries. And this is one we had quite a long discussion about, because it can be kind of a hard topic to figure out what are good healthy boundaries and at what point does it no longer a healthy boundary. So in a very, very broad sense, like boundaries just across the board, not even just like emotionally or anything, boundaries are like, you know, you think of like land boundaries and stuff like that, and boundaries are kind of like the limits of what you're okay with. And I had this little analogy that's like they're kind of like emotional fences around your emotional property of like, if you trespass on this, I will have to do something to protect myself emotionally, you know, and I will have a reaction to it. So how do you make boundaries? How does one make boundaries? Do you have any? But I have steps here but do you have any initial thoughts before I get into it about what?
Well, I think you have to be pretty clear in yourself what your own values are and what matters to you.
Absolutely.
I think that's a really good starting point.
For sure.
If you want to go from there.
For sure. Yeah, and I think that is kind of our step one, is like this is where you have, I mean, it all requires work, but this is where you really need to like go get your pickaxe and your shovel and go excavating in your own brain, is you need to figure out what you are and are not okay with. And one of the hard things about this kind of thing, it changes over time. What we're okay with and what we're not okay with, it can change over time and with experience and like whatever. And sometimes you only figure out something is a boundary for you or is too much for you by having it happen and getting hurt by it.
Yeah.
So that it can be hard. And then it's getting hurt is a part of life, and it can be a learning thing. It ideally it is a learning thing, but that doesn't mean it hurts any less. But it is part of life. And so you need to like look into yourself about what you're okay with, what you're not okay with, and what you need to do to protect yourself when it happens. And so we had an example here we might sort of use throughout. So it's like, as an example, I'm sure you probably also feel this way, that like, I'm not okay with people raising their voice at me in the context of a disagreement. So that's a thing that I'm not okay with. That is a boundary for me. And if someone raises their voice at me in the context of a disagreement, what I will do to protect myself is remove myself from that situation. My two favorite people. Oh my god, hi, Twink.
We've been talking about you.
We've been talking. Have we? Did we? A little bit. We didn't really. A tiny bit.
Small.
Hi, Twink.
So small.
Good to see you. Welcome. So I think the one of the important things here, and this is like where we can kind of get into the line between healthy and unhealthy boundaries, is like healthy boundaries are not giving someone an ultimatum, even if it can kind of sound like one, because a healthy boundary is not, if you do this, I'm going to do this to punish you. It is, if you do this, I need to do this for myself to protect myself. So
yeah,
how goody is that? The Twinkle Toes? I can't believe it. So because what can happen sometimes is people will do the kind of ultimatum thing of like, if you yell at me, then I'm just leaving. Like,
yeah.
But it's like, it does matter how you communicate that. And that is step 2 of like, you need to communicate your boundaries to the other person, where you're establishing these boundaries. And that can be, sometimes you get to do it preemptively, and sometimes it has to happen in the moment. If we're in the moment and someone is yelling at me, it's very helpful for me to be able to be like, I do not want to have this conversation while you are yelling at me. If you are not able to not do that, I'm going to take a break and we can talk about this some other time.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
And that's a really hard thing to do, especially when the emotions are very high and it's something you have to work on. It's a habit. Good communication is a habit because it often requires making yourself vulnerable, which is hard and scary, but the more you do it, the easier it becomes.
Yeah, I mean, if someone raises their voice to me, it might be like, when you're raising your voice, I feel like, you're running me over. I feel not heard.
Yeah.
I feel like we're not communicating.
Mm-hmm.
We need to take some time here, and if it continues, I will leave the room.
Yeah, and I think, like, it can be good for you and it can be helpful to the other person to understand why that is a boundary and be able to explain it, like you say, like, this is how I feel when that happens and this is why I'm not okay with it. But you also do not have to justify your boundaries to someone. If someone is pushing you on your boundaries, you do need to put your foot down and say, this is a boundary.
I'm laughing because I realized that lately I did actually raise my voice. I had to remove myself.
You did. You removed yourself.
That doesn't happen very often with me anymore, but it did. And you have to try not to slam the door when you leave. The
moment someone raises their voice in a disagreement, there's no point arguing either way.
Yeah,
we're going to talk about fights
Yeah.
too and stuff, and how to handle them and stuff. And when we get to the like, how do you work on your actual relationship and such.
Yeah.
So we have, you need to figure out what you are and are not okay with, and what you need in that situation to protect yourself. Which is like you say, it's like, if you yell at me, I no longer feel heard. I, maybe even feel like a little physically threatened. And in order to not have those feelings, I need to remove myself, which is very different from, if you yell at me, I'm going to punish you by not talking to you.
Yeah.
Which is intent, right? And it's, again, it comes down to the like kind of fear or love thing. Are you making this decision out of love for yourself, or are you doing it, because this was getting, again, we're getting ahead of ourselves, but when we, like retaliate against people and try to hurt people because we're hurting, what we're really doing is protesting the disconnect and protesting the hurt feelings, which is why it doesn't work. But we'll get to more. We'll get to more of that later. I realize I may not have explained that super well. But
That's okay. We're not machines.
We're not machines. We're not machines. Be gentle on yourself.
Be gentle.
And then the last step, in my opinion, is you actually need to follow through on what you say. If you raise your voice at me, or like you are raising your voice at me, and if you are unable to not do that in this conversation, I am going to go to a different room so I can calm down and so you can calm down. You have to actually do it, which can be hard. And if you find that you're able to do the first two steps and you're having trouble with the following through, you need to examine why. Because again, it does often come down to fear. It's like, if I, push back against this person, what am I afraid is going to happen? And you might ask yourself why you're afraid of that. Because one thing I used to do a lot is kind of subconsciously is oh, I don't want to ask for too much because they might decide I'm too much work and leave. And it's really though, if me pushing for a basic boundary is too much and they want to leave, they should leave. And that's scary and that would hurt a lot, but ultimately it would be for the best.
That's so hard to navigate though, especially when, your boundary is, well, if this kind of behavior continues, I'm going to leave the relationship. And that's terrifying for most people. This is a conversation we've had a lot lately about a lot of us tend to be more comfortable in the discomfort that we know.
Yeah.
I'm kind of happy on my island of discomfort, so I'm not going to leave it because I'm afraid of what's out there. It might not be as good as the lousy thing I have over here, but that's no way to live.
Yeah.
It takes some bravery. It takes a lot of bravery, frankly, sometimes to enforce a boundary.
Yeah.
Depending on how serious the consequences are.
I think our next Sister Tattoo Mom quote is, "We're not machines."
Isn't that the truth? I've been saying that forever.
When things end up as a shouting match, things never end well. I've had one screaming match in my life, and emotions got so bad. I'm so sorry to hear that. We're also going to get to this later about different kinds, the three kind of types of fights or disagreements or whatever you want to call them. Wow. And I, for a very, very long time, since I was young, I don't ever, well, maybe not, maybe rarely, but I really don't attack people. If someone yells at me, I just completely withdraw. Completely. If someone is just being too much for me, I just completely withdraw, which drives some people, my sister, crazy.
Though, what I've noticed lately about you've become very skillful and diplomatic in difficult conversations and articulating a position with grace and diplomacy and in a very articulate way. That's a skill that's hard to come by.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with withdrawing if that's what you need to do to to come to a place where you can deal with something in a good way. But if it's retreating, just running away from it, that's something different.
Yeah. I'm not sure I agree. Sometimes raising voice can be a symptom of feeling like you aren't heard. Yeah, so this is getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but one thing I read in that book that I don't know where I put it, that I found fascinating was the idea that when you have a fight with someone, it doesn't, the contents of the fight, whatever you're fighting about, that is not what it's about. It has nothing to do with what you are fighting about. When people fight, it is actually a protest that you are feeling disconnected from your partner. So gaming expert is saying, if you're yelling, it is probably because you don't feel heard. You don't feel like the other person is hearing you. But unfortunately, yelling is, even though it's can be our gut reaction, it usually has the opposite effect, and it will make you be heard even less.
That's interesting though. So imagine if you're in a conversation with someone and one of them, the other person raises their voice. So can you stop yourself in that moment and say, this would be interesting to try. I noticed that you're raising your voice. Do you think I don't hear you? Am I not hearing you? And then if you have enough time to say, I think this is what you said,
Yeah.
I think you're trying to communicate to me that you're not happy about XYZ. I wonder if that would take it down a notch.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you.
That's interesting, right?
I do think
I don't know. I just
for
came up with
me,
that.
yeah, I do think for me at least, I usually need to be like, I want to keep having this conversation, but I need to calm down first before I even can get to that kind of clarity.
Yeah.
Like I think you're right.
Yeah. Interesting.
Me and my friend often shout at each other because we're so engaged and we're usually in agreement. I mean, like that's okay because it's about the connecting, right?
Well,
and if you're feeling good about it,
and then there's a whole cultural thing that I don't know. Maybe some people are happier having.
Got to the point where I couldn't take it anymore, and now that person isn't in my life, and that's so much better. I'm so glad for you that is. They verbally attacked someone I deeply loved, and I wasn't gonna back down from that. Yeah, no, I agree with that. I agree.
That's hard.
You have a point. I was mostly referring to the case of people raising their voices and just shouting, but I definitely agree. People realize they're getting too emotional. I think, like, generally when people are yelling, it's because they don't feel heard. So they like some part of their brain is like, if I am louder, I will be heard. But it doesn't work like that.
Some people who feel they don't heard or feel they aren't getting heard are terrible listeners. I have to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want to make a generalization, but I've definitely had that experience.
We have talked about. We're talking about communication in a lot of this. We had a whole nother discussion about communication, and that might be something I come back to again, maybe next week or something. I don't know, but like communication is, again, it's about connecting, and in order to like connect, you have to like make the other person feel heard, and if you do not make the other person feel heard, often they will not listen to you. Wad's mom, that has happened to me before. Someone has stopped the conversation and you're raising your voice, and I didn't even realize it'd become louder. That happened for a long time. Yeah, but that's like, it can be hard when there's heightened emotions, and sometimes we don't even know what's happening, and it can be difficult to step back and realize what is happening, to be like, okay, let's take a sec. I'm a big fan of taking breaks and letting emotions calm down because I have very big emotions. They're very big.
So big.
So big.
All the big.
So big. So big. So we were talking about boundaries at some point. Years ago.
Some point back there.
But just as a sort of, like, for me, just in terms of healthy versus unhealthy boundaries, healthy boundaries come down to knowing what you're protecting and if you're okay with that. Because I think often unhealthy boundaries come from unexamined insecurity or anxiety. Like, I've had, acquaintances mostly in the past where it was like, is a girl and a guy, and the girl would, sort of be like, oh, you can't talk to other girls, you can't be friends with other girls, or feeling threatened by that. And that is coming from insecurity, and it's clearly unexamined insecurity, because as soon as you are demanding that other people do things, to accommodate your insecurity or whatever, and you are not willing to actually examine it, that is not healthy. And my last point here was healthy boundaries are thoughtful, and you are aware that they're malleable and that they change over time and as things may be worked on. Like, I personally, like, especially with the polyamory thing, I've had to work a lot on my insecurity and coming down to what actually makes me feel secure. And most of the time, my partner not talking to other girls is not actually what makes me feel secure. So you need to, like, you just gotta excavate that. What are you doing down there, woman? I don't know if you guys can hear that.
I'm trying to pick up my notes with my toes while not moving my upper body. It's a sort of yoga trick. I'm working on my toe mobility, everybody.
Toeability.
Right. Oh, we should trademark that. That's what Dad would say.
I bet someone already has.
I'm gonna look it up.
And then, so, the last little bit of the working on yourself is we're not going to get too deep into this, but a big part of it can be, in regards to working on relationships, like examining what your beliefs around what a relationship is and what you want out of it, because we tend to use terms that mean one thing to us and something else to other people, and that creates issues. Thank you, Bun That Games, for the hydrate. And this is something we had to talk about, which is, at the end of the day, in my opinion, your happiness comes first. We sometimes have this thing about, like, oh, you should put others' happiness above your own, but I do not agree with that. What I do think is that for good relationships and for your own happiness, sometimes you can and should put other people's self-interest above your own. Because that's really what it's about. It's not about, because there's this weird thing that of like putting someone else's happiness above your own. It just sounds to me like, oh, that means you're going to be less happy. Where it's like, if you are doing something to serve someone else, you know, if I do the dishes and put the dishes away, you know, to be helpful to you, not necessarily because I want to do it, that's not necessarily serving my self-interest, but it's serving your interest, and by doing that, it's serving our, you know, connection and our relationship, which then benefits me.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, it's still benefiting me, even though I'm serving someone else's interest.
Yeah. I think I would use the word well-being instead of happiness. I actually
Yeah.
think happiness is overrated, not to take aim at the U.S. Constitution or anything like that. The pursuit of happiness, the pursuit of well-being. I think I maybe believe in the pursuit of well-being.
I think we just have too many ideas about happiness that are wrong. Like what we think will make us happy and what we think won't make us happy. We are honestly like super, like one of the things that actually makes people the happiest is like serving other people, like helping other people, doing things for other people.
For sure.
And I don't think people realize that, because often we see, oh, you know, I'll make dinner, I'll make the dishes as like some kind of, oh, it's all for you and I'm not getting anything out of it, when that's not true at all. I don't think you should do things that you're not getting anything out of. But you have to be aware of what you are getting out of it, which is, you know, if I do something nice for you, I'm also getting benefit out of it.
Yeah, for sure. It's a tricky thing to navigate, because certainly there are those people who devote their whole lives to the well-being of others.
It's not good.
And that can be overdone as well, for sure.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then one other point I want to touch on, particularly with relationships, because I see it happen sometimes and it scares me, is codependency and what it is and isn't. Yeah, we must be super happy all the time. There can be no drop in that heightened level ever. Yeah, I think it is my general belief that the meaning of life and like whatever the pursuit in life is, it's not about being happy. It's about learning and about growing. And I think, yeah, be like expecting that we can or should be happy all the time is ridiculous, because that's not what life is about. And we wouldn't even enjoy it if we were happy all the time. Anyone not happy will be terminated.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That sounds like a great premise for a movie, BB.
I think
that.
there's a video game about that, maybe, or at least like where they all have to wear masks.
It feels that's kind of creepy undertone
very
to
creepy,
it.
Very
but
creepy. Sorry, but back to codependency. So codependency. I want to talk about what it is and isn't. Yeah, codependency is terrifying. Like generally, yeah, because it's one of those things. I think sometimes I feel the same way about how people feel about narcissism and self-confidence, where it's like often people don't want to speak well about themselves because they think they'll come off as narcissistic, and like the very fact that you're worried you're gonna come off as narcissistic means you're not narcissistic. But it's like we're so worried about doing it that sometimes we won't do a thing that's good because we think it's anyway. But so what codependency is excessive reliance on other people for approval and self-identity, which is usually characterized by stuff like low self-esteem, not being good at establishing or maintaining boundaries, focusing too much on the opinions of others, like allowing other people to dictate what you can and can't do, like putting what other people think, what other people want above what you want all of the time to the detriment of you. What it is not, codependency is not needing other people. As we've talked about, needing other people is a normal and healthy and good thing.
I need you.
I need you too. Because like we have this wild idea about independence, that independence comes from not needing anyone, which is not at all true. There's actually a sentence from that book I was reading that I liked so much I quoted it here, which is that the more we can reach out to our partners, and I think also just like relationships in general, the more separate and independent we can be. So actually we believe that the more disconnected we are from other people, the better off we are, but actually, and the more independent we can be when it's actually the opposite. The more connected, the more you secure you feel in your relationships, the more independent you can be. I think it's a great thing in the Brave New World. I need Wad sometimes. She's pretty cool. I need you too sometimes.
I just want to pick up on Bunny Boots said up there that sometimes she watches sad movies on purpose. I think that's really normal. I think that's just part of...
Crying is so good.
Well, I
So
think
good
we
for you.
all want... It's healthy for us to experience the full range of human emotion,
Yeah.
even the ones that are... we might think are unpleasant. I mean, it's normal. We need to feel them. You know, especially in our culture where, yeah, as we said, God help you, you don't feel happy. You need to push down those negative feelings. That's going to blow up. It
Yeah.
always blows up.
You can't. There's no shortcut to
No.
dealing with feelings. You don't get to get rid of them. It doesn't
No,
work.
it's not benign. Actually, one of my a favorite author of mine, Elizabeth Gilbert, said, "Unused creativity is not benign." I feel the same way about
Yeah.
that. It's gonna come
Yeah.
out badly.
She's funky fresh with that blueberry head. Thanks. Waz is wonderful, and so is Mom Yeller wonderful. Thank you. You're also wonderful. I love you guys.
We love you. I love you guys. I have only ever met. I'm so glad I learned Twitch and have been watching the streams because I've gotten to know you guys a little bit, and I really like to know my daughter's friends without simultaneously trying to insert myself too much.
I think you are an overthinker.
I'm a lawyer. What do you want?
That's fair. That's fair. Bottling things up
I'm
is a
not really.
recipe for nothing but explosion. Exactly. There's no feelings always come out one way or another. You can deal with them or you cannot, but they're gonna come out anyway. And like one last note about the codependency thing and just the like the more connected, the more secure we are, the more independent we can be. This comes back to the attachment theory we talked about before, which is if we need a strong base to explore from. The stronger the base we have, the more confident we are in exploring and being open and stuff like that. I would totally hire your mom for my lawyer.
Oh, thank you.
Great, thanks.
I'm mighty.
She is mighty. She is so mighty. And like last but not least, this is I didn't want to get too into this, but just exploring your own issues, you know, excavating that it's really good for you. It's good for your relationship. It's good for everybody around you, to know where you have work to do, to know what your sore spots are and how to deal with them when that happens. But like working on yourself does not automatically translate to better relationships. It doesn't in a way, but you cannot necessarily fix a relationship by just working on yourself. You need to work on the relationship too, because it's kind of different. Gotta get something to copyright. I mean, we
trademark.
Towability.
Yeah.
I feel like I had another point, but I forget what it was. But it's okay.
Yeah.
It's fine.
The
It's fine.
Towability partnership.
A partnership. I think. Oh no, we did cover it actually. It's fine. All right, for our last section of the day, we're going to talk about how to actually work on your relationships.
Should we work on our relationship? Should we?
I think we have been.
Have we?
Yeah. Over the years,
We
and
should.
even lately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes you and Lindsay work on your relationship by doing partner yoga
That's true.
or wrestling.
I mean,
It's pretty
We
funny.
haven't wrestled in a while.
It's
I think I hurt
actually it
myself.
scares me when you guys wrestle.
Wow.
But
Sometimes my sister and I get so just riled up from stress or like whatever, we just go wrestle.
it's terrifying.
It's like, you know, it's like wolf pups. They wrestle.
Yeah.
They play fight. It's fine.
We
It's good.
go treetop trekking together. She's a really good climber.
Thank you. But not right
Yeah.
now because my shoulders hurt.
Yeah, mine does too.
Sadly. Okay, so what is the most important thing for a relationship, Mom?
Oh. Really, I think the ability and willingness to listen. I think that's huge.
Yeah.
Because that opens the door to so much else, right?
Wrestling is sometimes necessary. I wish my sisters-
Wrestling is also, you know what else is really important? Is having a sense of humor.
Yeah.
And having a sense of humor sometimes about hard things
Yeah.
is huge. Huge.
Easier.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think for me, and this is in my notes here, the most important relation or like thing for any relationship to work for me is feeling emotionally safe. And by emotionally safe, I mean you're able to connect, you feel heard, you feel respected with that person, and being met with not judgment. Those two things are huge. Those things are absolutely huge. If we feel heard, we feel respected, and we feel like we won't be judged, we feel safe. And that is all we really want.
Yeah.
We feel really, that's, you know, a lot of times we're afraid of change and that kind of thing because we're so scared of not feeling safe. I love a play fight. Oh my god, I have 0 brain cells. I used to play fight with my sister when I was a kid. It's lovely. Hugely important, yeah. And so, like, the as you sort of identified, one of the biggest things to do to, like, work on relationships is communication, and a big part of that is listening. And I've been developing my own little psychology theories lately, and in my opinion, there's really two kinds of conversation. I mean, like, so there can be just like transactional conversations, which are literally just for the exchange of information, which is like, you know, you ask someone a question, you ask someone for directions, it's transactional. Although I think this also can apply to those. But I think in most, if not all, conversations, you are either connecting with the other person or you're disconnecting from the other person. That's like all conversations. And so, you know, connecting is like you come away from the conversation, you feel like you've been seen, you feel like you've been heard, understood, you feel closer. And disconnecting would be, you know, coming away feeling minimized or important, belittled, like you haven't been heard. And like those are like the two things. And I think it can be a very mild connect or disconnect, or it can be huge. And yes, I need to drink water now. Hold on.
Yeah. It's hard. Sometimes those, you know, cocktail party conversations, small talky conversations can sometimes feel a little draining and emptying. Other times, depending on how they're navigated, can actually be a point of connection. Like we sometimes talk about how we get to know some of the, you know, people at our local coffee shop, and the initial relationship is navigated actually through small talk, and then it can sort of expand from there. So sometimes the subject matter is part of it.
Yeah.
Depends how it's handled.
Yeah, I agree. And so this was something I touched on a little bit earlier, but I'm going to restate it now, which is what happens when we fight or we argue or so on and so forth, stuff like that. And it's not about, if you fight with someone, it's not about the contents of the fight. It's never about the contents of the fight. It's a protest over emotional disconnect from the other person. That is what it is about. And this can happen, like, whether you're fighting about, like, who needs to take out the garbage, or whether you're fighting about bigger issues. A lot of the time, it's just, like, we're just feeling disconnected from the other person. We're not feeling like we've been understood or validated or stuff like that. And to go back to kind of like the biology survival thing, like fights put us back, like they put us into fight or flight mode because emotional disconnect literally feels like a threat because of the whole thing, where it's like, you know, if you're not a part of the herd, then you're in danger. And so being accepted by others and feeling heard and like feeling belonging with others is super important. And this next part is, these next 2 points actually are like straight out of stuff I read in the, I like tossed it over here. I'm gonna grab it again. I apologize. Small space.
Tight.
So it's
Hold me tight.
It's called Hold Me Tight. It's by Sue Johnson. It's called 7 Conversations for a Lifetime of Love, so on and so forth. It's a great book. I recommend it. But she talks about, I think her term for it is like the demon dialogues, but they're basically what is happening in like the different kinds of like fights or disconnects. And the 3 types are like, so in any given situation when there's a disconnect happening, people either attack or withdraw. So there's 3 kinds of fights, which is attack, you're both attacking. Attack, withdraw, which is like all of the fights I have. Because I always withdraw. I don't attack. And then there's also withdraw. Yeah.
Sound effects.
So the attack fight is, it's, you know, what we often think of when we think of a fight. It's both people talking quite heatedly, maybe even yelling, and usually they're going around and around with the blame. They're trying to figure out who's the bad guy. They're trying to figure out who is at fault or whatever. Like, there may be examples thrown around. There may be arguments over details. There may be insults. Like, that's what we think of when we think of, like, a fight. Like, a verbal fight, in my opinion. And then, but what's happening in this situation is both people are actually crying out for connection from the other person. That is what they're protesting. And it can be hard because they're focused on victory, exactly. And because for some reason we believe that to feel better in a fight, we have to win the fight. When actually that never makes you feel better. Even if the person is like, okay, yeah, you're right, you win, like, because that's not what we want. What we want is connection, which is why the contents of the fight do not matter.
A light bulb just went on as you said that. Yeah.
Tell us about the light bulb.
Yeah. Well, because someone important to us who is not our sister, someone else important in our family dynamic has this habit of throwing up the hands and saying, okay, you win, I won't, you're in charge. And it's just so frustrating. It's deflating. It's like, no.
Well, that actually brings us to the next fight, which is, again, though, it's the attack withdraw. And that what happens when attack withdrawing is happening is one person is loudly protesting the disconnect by attacking the other person, and the other partner is feeling paralyzed by the conflict, by what they feel is criticism, and so what they do is they would just withdraw. They don't want to fight. This is how I feel. I don't want to fight. I see no, like, reason to throw insults at people or to try to prove to people they're in the wrong, except sometimes because I like being right, but that's a whole other thing. And so, like, and then at the point you're just removing all connection. And not to call out my sister, but this is the kind of, when we fight, which is very rarely, this is the kind of thing that happens where she will push, she wants to talk about things, and I withdraw. And when I withdraw, she pushes harder. And when she pushes harder, I withdraw harder. And it's an endless cycle of bad, basically. Yeah, it's just exactly. She takes a step forward, I take a step back. She takes a step forward, it's just odd forever. Forever. And that's, when someone gives up, that's exactly the problem, is when we're having a fight with someone, they're often, like, there is no way for us to really win, because even if they give up and concede defeat, that doesn't make us feel any better, because we're still not connecting, which is at the core of it. I just keep chasing you around and it drives me nuts, but we're getting better. We are getting better.
Yeah, you're a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't always see you, but
no, we have gotten a lot better. And then the last kind of fight, which isn't even really a fight, and it's why it's so scary, and I think it's kind of like the end that people can reach. Like, usually people, I think, start, in relationships that may be failing, they usually start with one or the other of attack or attack withdraw, and then if it goes on for too long, it can become withdraw, where nobody is fighting anymore. Yeah. Both of them are just withdrawing.
Yeah, it's not a relationship anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And at that point, it's usually the people have both decided that maybe they're the problem, and so they withdraw, and it becomes like a depressive state of the relationship, because it doesn't feel like it's even worth fighting for anymore. And that's when marriages and stuff fail.
It's like coexistence. You get two separate planets.
Yeah.
It's not even.
Yeah.
Some long-term marriages go like that for sure.
Yeah. Which is,
or partnerships. I shouldn't use the word marriage. Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. And so one of the best things to do is being able to identify if you are someone who feel like you're not connecting to your partner, if you fight a lot, or one of you or both of you do the withdrawing thing a lot, it can be very helpful to look at it when you're not in it and be like, which one do we tend to do? And maybe even be able to outline a situation where we did it, so the next time it happens you can point it out. And the important thing here too is when you're talking about when it happens and how it happens, what you need to do is focus on what you are doing. It is like, as soon as you focus on you statements, it becomes a lot easier to connect. If you say, when you, like, I, yell at you because, or like I get upset because you haven't done this, and I then do this, and then when you respond, I do this. It becomes like you have to own up to what you are doing. You need to be able to own up to what you are doing. And while you can discuss what the other person is doing, what you don't want to do is to say, well, you do this. Well, it's because, like, the point here is that when people fight, at the end of the day, neither of you is actually at fault, and neither of you is the bad guy. The bad guy is actually the way
the pattern of behavior,
the way the communication is happening. Absolutely.
I think what else that brings up for me is something we talked about earlier, and this is something I always deeply believe, is that the most powerful place you have to work from is here.
Yeah.
Like focusing on controlling what you can control, changing what you can change.
Absolutely.
And that is pretty much always only here.
Yeah.
And you feel so much better when you identify your part in a dysfunctional behavioral pattern, recognize it, state it clearly, and for your sake and the sake of the relationship, doing what you need to do, to make it better. That's your job.
Yeah.
The other part of it is the other person's business. And if you can have a constructive conversation about that, that's important and huge, but it's only part of it.
Yeah.
It's only part of it.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah. So in the book, they kind of talk about this as like a dance. There's a bunch of silly names for it, and I can't remember what they all are, but it's good. And she talks about owning your steps in the dance. Like, you need to identify what you are doing, and then to go further, to really get at the connection, you need to figure out what you are protesting when you when you yell, when you you insult the other partner, when you tell them it's their fault. What are you actually protesting? Is it because you don't feel heard? Is it you don't feel important? Like, you have to kind of go down a couple of emotional levels to figure out what you feel you are missing. And these are like the like softer emotions, because usually my therapist likes to talk about how anger is kind of like in the emotional iceberg, anger is kind of the top part, and it's not really what it's about, because anger is usually like a prelude to a different emotion, and often it's fear. It's at the very, very core of it, I think it's always fear. But that's what it is, right? Is, if my partner, say, isn't spending enough time with me, and I'm getting mad at them because, oh, why do you do this so much? It's a waste of time. What I'm really saying is, I feel like you are putting this as more important than I am. And so that takes some work. That definitely takes some work to be able to become that kind of self-aware. And I think that's kind of a lifelong thing. But realizing that blaming other people it doesn't actually really get you anywhere is like step one.
Gets you nowhere.
Yeah. And that when you're fighting with people, it's not actually about what you're fighting about. It's the turn of the cogs and the way it's going.
Can we make a heart? Can we make a like if this is like a partner yoga thing, and then what do we do with her?
Great.
It's not a very good one.
That's okay. We tried our best. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about too. Oh, a random WODS fact. Do you have a random mom fact?
A random mom fact? Yeah, I have a black belt in Matsubayashi Shorin Karate, and I've also studied some Kung Fu.
You could kick your butt.
So I could kick your butt, even though I'm not very big.
She could still kick your butt. My random fact here, we'll do this one, is since Twink is here, I will talk about this one because she was there. Is that when I was young, me and my sister went sledding at our friend's house, and I got hit in the face with like the corner of a wooden sled. And I don't know if you can see it, but there's a little furrow in my eyebrow right there, and that's where the scar is. And it bled like crazy. You can see it's right. It's that where that furrow is. Oh, it would be a kiss. I thought you were looking at it.
Or head kiss.
Oh god, that was horrible. Anyway, that's my fun fact.
It was terrible.
She was bleeding. It was horrible.
Oh, I'm so glad I wasn't there to witness that.
Yeah, terrible. That's absolutely true. That was after I got the stitches here, and I was terrified of going to the hospital again.
No more scars for you. You have enough scars.
I have enough.
No more scars.
I have enough scars.
Yeah.
I didn't scar when the snake bit me, so that's good. Yeah, that was rough.
Yeah.
Because I was more freaked out at the fear of getting stitches than the fact that there was like blood coming down my face. Yeah. And Twink knew it was happening, but my friend's mom was I guess being real with me, which she should not have done because I was a child and freaked out about stitches. Anyway, the snake just wanted a kiss. Yeah, he did with his teeth. Anyway.
Yeah, it was scary.
The last thing I wanted to talk about was key moments of connection. And key moments of connection are these moments that happen where either directly or indirectly one person in the relationship or one partner, if we're talking about romantic relationships, like reaches out for connection and how the other partner responds. And I think there's work to be done on both parts, but I think the especially important part is the response part. Because if you're the reaching partner and you are, reaching for something, being aware of what you're reaching for and making the signal for it as clear as possible is very helpful.
I need a hug immediately.
You need a hug, then I know exactly what you need, and if I am able, then I just give you a hug.
But sometimes she's not able.
No, and I think this is a point I think is really important that they didn't really talk about in the book, but I think for me, when you're the reaching partner, understand that if you're reaching out with a need, like if it's I need physical affection, understand what you are asking for is actually the acknowledgement of that need. That is the connection point. It's not necessarily that, hey, I need a hug, I need it right this second or we're disconnecting. That's not what it is. It's I need you to acknowledge the need. That is what it is. And
we need to send BB a hug.
I'll come right over with a hug to you.
I don't know how we do that.
I don't think we can. It's okay. We love you though.
Yeah, we love you.
For the responding partner, being able to see when your partner is reaching out and acknowledging it is the most important thing in my head, because again, it's like, the ideal is like, oh, I need a hug. Either I get the hug immediately, or I am reassured that I will have that need met sometime later. So it's being acknowledged, and maybe rarely that, oh, I just can't fulfill that need. And having your partner or, the other person in the relationship be able to say, I can't feel that need right now, or I can't feel that need at all, is really important. And I mean, if you're in a relationship of any kind and you're repeatedly asking someone to fill that need and they're not able to, you need to reevaluate if that is actually a need you can get filled in that relationship and how you might get it elsewhere or otherwise. Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on that? I just talked a lot.
No, I think you covered it really well. I do think you've really hit on something there. I think when you're the person asking, you do have to also be sensitive to, what situation your partner is in. I mean, and this happens in my life a lot, because my partner works really, really, really hard, and sometimes he just doesn't have it to give.
Sure.
So it's a two-way street. But nothing is worse than though asking for something and feeling like you're blown off.
Yeah,
that's the worst.
That is why when I originally was making these notes, it was about like, oh, like they need to fill that need right then. But that's not actually what it is, because like you're saying, it's not like that's part of being the reaching partner, is understanding what you need is not necessarily to have that need filled right then, because your partner may not be able to for whatever reason, but having it be acknowledged is probably the most important thing.
It's huge. Yeah.
Assuming it generally follows with like you get that need filled later,
Yeah.
or you have another way to get that need filled.
I guess the place that might lead to is if that you express that need over and over and it's acknowledged over and over, but it never gets met.
Yeah,
then you've got
that's-
something
yes,
else to deal
absolutely.
with, right?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
for sure. For sure. Okay, well, I feel like we've covered everything I wanted to cover.
Okay.
How do you feel?
I
Anything
feel
else you wanna
good.
say? Good.
I feel good. This has been
glad.
really fun.
Yeah,
I
I'm
mean, totally
having a good time.
unscripted. I hope I
I'm gonna
haven't been
just-
too inappropriate.
No. I don't think anybody is online that I want to raid, so I guess we'll just not raid today.
Oh, no
That's
rating.
okay. Well,
Oh,
it's okay. All right, it's okay. No raid. Yeah. So that is going to be the end of the stream. Thank you everybody for coming. Is there anything you wanted to plug while you're here? Like your any websites?
any websites?
Instagram,
I
I don't know,
Oh,
whatever you
me.
want.
Okay. Well, if you want to know more about me, I do have a couple of websites. One is www.ljlaw.ca. That's my law firm. Wahoo! Like if you need a trademark lawyer.
Okay.
Which is hilarious.
Hold on, I'm gonna try to get the links. What is
Yeah.
it? It's ljlaw.ca.
Yeah, that's
You
the
sure?
one. Yeah, I'm sure. I have lots of websites.
You do. Don't you have one that was like I was looking at it earlier?
Yeah, Lisa James McKenzie.
Yeah, that just I think it has
It's got everything.
it has
yeah.
everything. So I'll link that one.
Yeah.
She kicks butt on Instagram too. That's correct.
Yeah, I'm also on Instagram. If you can follow me on Instagram.
What's your Instagram?
Lisa J McKay.
Lisa J
McKay. Yeah, I don't post a lot.
McKay?
Yeah,
What do you mean?
yeah, like that. Lisa J
Oh.
McKay.
That's Mick.
Yeah.
MCK.
MCK. Sorry, I call it McKay.
Okay. I was very confused. There
Yeah.
you go. If you want to see my mom, I'm gonna miss Mama. I'm gonna miss her too. Maybe we'll have you back
Yeah.
sometime. Probably, at some point or another. All right. Well, yeah. Thank you everybody who came and hang out. Thank you for the follows and the bits. As usual, the Discord is below. If you want to drop me a follow, I would super appreciate that. I will miss you all. If you need to copyright the toe thing for earlier. Yeah, absolutely. I hope you guys all have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for coming. Bye bye.